Wait, do we need to do any like intro or anything?
Oh no.
Is it weird for the guest to ask the first question in a podcast?
No, that's okay.
No.
I mean, so outside of trying to be in the creative space, I am in the healthcare industry.
I have a similar background as well.
So that's what I was going to ask. But I usually want to start with, where were you born?
Here, Dallas.
Dallas is native.
That specifically like North Dallas, like Carrollton, Plano area. So
Okay.
down Parker a little bit is kind of like where I grew up in. Like I lived closer to like Frankfurt, the Tollway area. So I was all Plano schools. I was in Dallas ISD for like the first 3 years, like K through third grade. And then our parents moved up because Plano was just kind of popping then.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, there are better schools up there. So they were just like, okay, cool. Let's take the kids up there. And we started going up there. So
Got it.
Yeah.
So for me, we're relatively new to Dallas, actually.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and my kids, we moved here July of this year, actually.
okay, wow.
So we were in Los
2022.
Angeles. Yeah, 2022. So
Yeah.
we were in Los Angeles most of my life, most
Mm-hmm.
of her life. And then pandemic just kind of like ruined LA for us
Mm-hmm.
forever.
Yeah,
So we took
because of restrictions and stuff like that, and just kind of keeping everybody like it was hard to do. A lot of comics moved to Texas, tons.
So like I wasn't in the comedy space, and being in healthcare, it was actually a good time. COVID was really good for, being in the healthcare industry. Either as an employee or as an owner, it didn't matter. It was great.
Yeah,
But what I started to notice was that you either lived in this very small little bubble where you didn't go anywhere, didn't do anything other than this small, very tight community. And the greater Los Angeles and the suburbs were kind of like restricted because it was just becoming more dangerous, more criminal activity, more homelessness, rampant drunk use. All of that stuff was what just kind of like kept turning us off. Because I got 3 boys.
yeah,
Didn't want to raise them over there.
yeah. I would imagine that would be
So yeah,
a lot of wrong groups that can fall into.
So that was kind of our main reason for leaving Los Angeles and coming here to Dallas, because we just fell in love with like the people, the community, the way you got treated. Just everything was different.
Yeah,
And I'm not gonna lie, dude. Like the amount of money you save by moving to Dallas from Los Angeles, it's huge. It's humongous amounts of money that you can save. Like I couldn't afford this house when I lived in California. There's no way.
No. And that's what we saw. There was an influx of people from California to Texas, and they were buying up like huge houses that they were able to buy cash almost, because they would sell their house in California that was worth, $1 million, and then they would come to Plano and be like, I can get this for what?
Yeah, I got
800,000. Awesome.
I got buddies that lived in, relatively decent to really affluent neighborhoods in California, specifically Los Angeles. When they sold their homes and came here, they were like, I just don't understand how much more house I get for way less than what I was paying.
Yeah, and like to pay it off and like to be done with it. Like if they found a buyer, like they were buying houses cash here. Like it actually, my wife and I bought the place that we're in close to downtown a little bit before the pandemic, and that was fortunate because like finding even a place that's like in the twos or like a modest like small condo or something like that was still like just being snatched up by investors and stuff like that. Like it wasn't necessarily people that were ever going to live in them, but someone from California came down, saw what they could buy, something like this, and then they would go and like see cool areas and be like, oh, I can buy up basically that entire floor or something like that, and then they would use them because they have leftover money. I mean, so why not? While you're down here, just in the neighborhood, you got a realtor already. Why not just do a package deal and buy a shit ton of places? So.
Well, the beauty of it is if you throw it all back into real estate again, you don't pay a dime in taxes.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we've all been on the internet, so we know like Grant Cardone and all those guys that always tell you like, dude, put it into more real estate. Just don't pay the taxes on it. I think that's what happened. But yeah, when we were hunting for a house, it took a while.
Oh yeah,
it took a while because everything we'd put an offer for, they would just boost it up more, And I was like, what's going on? Like, is there a gold rush I don't know about?
Man, there was. It was like a house gold rush here because and builders can't build them fast enough here. I got friends who are in the like the building industry, and she's like, we can't keep up with demand. Forget about staffing, like just the demand and like supplies and stuff like that you need for building houses were hard to come by because the prices were all being jacked up. So it really did create like a real tense like buying it. Like friends who got married around the pandemic or something like that when they were trying to find their first like family home, and maybe they're starting to have a lot of COVID babies. Obviously, they could not find places, and like some of them were not necessarily reduced, but they were basically required to submit like letters of more or less begging the seller, like being like, hey, I'm me and my wife, we're expecting our first kid, we're like sob stories kind of things, to like coax their realtor and like the seller to kind of go with this person instead of this person because maybe they're willing to offer the same amount. Or you like, it's crazy. Like it was, I had several friends have to like literally submit letters of, you know,
it's like a personal statement
wish
for
list.
college to get into a
Yeah,
house.
they're writing essays to buy houses. It was insane. It was.
I think I went through that with one of the houses that we were putting an offer for, but they didn't give it to us anyways because somebody offered like almost 80 grand more than what I had offered.
Yeah, and they just boost the asking price by like however much they want.
Yeah.
It was probably someone else from California.
Our real estate agent, so who was helping us, he's like, I've never seen such a large influx of people just moving from other places. And he's like, LA was a big one. A lot of people from New York left.
Yeah.
Chicago. So pretty much any big city that was democratically run lost a big amount of people that were like, I don't identify with you guys anymore.
Yeah.
Even though I did for most of my life, you just kind of took me out of the game.
Yeah.
And I felt that way too. Like I was pretty, I'm liberal as it is. I don't know about your kind of views on it, but
most comics are. You're hard pressed to find super conservative unless that's the character they play. Like,
right.
Yeah.
And it's like, when I don't think most comics are like either very Democratic or Republican. Most of you guys are in the middle, where you kind of like.
Man, it depends on who you talk to and their upbringing. Honestly, there's a lot of like visible scars from your parents and stuff as to like how you lean, and some of them. I mean, generally, I would say centrist to liberal. I would say by and large, most comics are like socially liberal, but like, and honestly, probably fiscally liberal as well because none of them have any money, so they're not in a position to be like, yeah, I don't want the government to take my money. So
I think like maybe even as a comic, as your career grows and you start a family and stuff, I think those views start to change a little bit.
Yeah, because different things matter to you. I mean, different things matter to you when you had your kids before.
Yeah, because when you don't have kids, you're like, responsibility is not the same. It's always responsibility towards things before you have kids, and then it's towards a person where you're like, oh no, this makes a big impact. Because then exactly what you touched on is like the scars of our parents. You don't want to pass them down to your kids.
No.
So you're like, how do I do this differently?
Yeah, but you always do.
Yeah, it's
unavoidable.
So you're born here, but your family
they're
too?
from Iran. Yeah.
Okay, from Iran, and they left like.
They both left around when they were 18, 19 years old, and one left pre-revolution, one left post. So this is the first revolution, the 1970s revolution. So my dad is roughly 10, 11 years older than my mom, and he left like when shit was getting weird, and then my mom like witnessed the whole thing, and then she left when she turned 18 for school. So which,
if anybody ever does listen to this podcast, in our cultures, I'm Armenian, you're Iranian, so like 10-year or 11-year differences between spouses is completely normal.
Yeah, I mean, even some of my white friends have like bigger. It was really uncommon when I was growing up, and I thought it was totally normal. Like when I would friends in elementary school would be like, "Yeah, my parents are like 2 years apart. Like my mom is older." I'm like, "What the fuck?" Like
it was things that I wasn't used to either. Growing up, so growing up in Los Angeles, it's diverse, but 10-year age gaps between spouses and stuff, or like women having children relatively early, like 16 to 21. You've already had like at least 2 kids or something.
That was stuff that was customary back, like where they grew up.
Where we grew up, I'm sure in Iran it was the same way for your parents. So did they meet there or they met here?
No, they met here. They were both graduated from college. If maybe my mom might have still been in school or like finishing up, but she they met when they were working in Addison. I think my dad worked or owned or managed a restaurant at the time that both my uncle, my mom's brother, and my mom worked at for a period of time, and then that's actually where my aunt, my mom's brother's wife now, they met at that. Everyone met at the same restaurant, so like it was kind of like a cool little group, and then that's like the main familial unit I have now. It's like my immediate family is like my parents, and then my uncle on my mom's side, and my aunt and their 2 kids. It's like the cousins I grew up with. You always have like cousins that you're super close with. Maybe you had like a ton of them. We had a bunch in Iran, and we had this. My dad's side also lived here, but we were always kind of like closer in proximity with my mom's side, and my mom only had one brother, so it was pretty simple to just have it be the 8 of us instead of a giant family gathering every single time. So we took family trips with them. Like that was the side that we stayed closest to, and they all kind of met at the same joint. So
So for me, just to kind of answer your question, is small family unit. So I have my mom and her sister, and then they have a second cousin who has kids, and that was kind of like the cousin relationship. That's all on my mom's side. No real connection to my dad's side of the family.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't even know the guy himself either.
Yeah. Well.
So, our parents got divorced when I was super young.
Gotcha.
Just
okay.
That, that's what happened.
Yeah, he wasn't around much. Did you
He wasn't
have
around
any relationship
at all.
with him?
So no, I actually seeked him out after my second son was born.
Really?
I was just like, I'm an adult now, and I'm not seeking a father. More, I'm just seeking to figure out who you were or who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, apparently I have like 3 or 4 half brothers around the world.
Really?
So yeah,
Where are they?
2 are in Russia and 1 is in Armenia, I believe.
Really?
Yeah.
And where's your dad?
He passed away a few years back, but he was also in Russia.
Okay.
So after he and my mom divorced, he moved to Russia, met with a woman, had another child. That didn't work out. Moved to another part of Russia, met another woman, and then that did work out.
Okay, gotcha.
So when I actually tracked him down, he had his wife, who had a daughter from a previous marriage, and they had 2 kids, I guess, together.
Yeah, so you had some siblings kind of scattered around from like half siblings around.
So I'm the eldest of this group of people, but none of us actually really know. We don't know each other, actually. No. That's the thing. Is like we have no connection to each other whatsoever.
Yeah, the one common denominator was the one that was kind of jumping around. Your dad was the one.
Yeah. But like it was good to get to know the guy a little bit.
I bet.
It was crazy. It taught me a lot about things that I had, traits of his, without even knowing the guy. Certain ways I would speak, certain, I don't know how to explain it, but like it was kind of like him.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way or a good way. It was just like, wow, genetics.
Yeah, that's
good old DNA. I guess it passes down a lot more than just looks.
It's just surprising with like with not a lot of exposure to him.
I mean, I would say none. Because if you're under a year old when your parents divorce and you don't see each other ever again, I mean, you don't have any cognitive, the development at that point. You're not going to remember anything.
Yeah. Did your mom remarry?
She did, and it was good for a little while, but then they got divorced too. Okay. So I guess I learned from both of them to break this cycle. Mm-hmm. So like I'm very much so devoted to my wife and my 3 kids. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
So what about your side of the family? So how come you guys were more closely related to your mom's side versus your dad's side?
My dad's side was always like a bit mysterious, and it was so he had like 1 or 2 brothers here in Dallas, and there's always like, I mean, there was just a little bit of mystery in his side of the family where he still had family, mainly like a sister and maybe another brother that was still in Iran and stuff like that. So some of it was proximity. I mean, we would very rarely get to see my dad's older sister, but every once in a while we would go to family gatherings at his older brother's place, who also lived like in the Addison, North Dallas area and stuff like that. There wasn't really a definitive reason. Like his side of the family hung out with more of his side of the family, and that was kind of their familial unit. And I think it wasn't, I don't think it was with any, resentment or anything like that, but we just jived better with my uncle. And I mean, we had great times over there. I remember some fond memories are over on my dad's side of the family with, his older brother and stuff like that. But it was just, we lived closer to my uncle on my mom's side. It was a little easy because they had, I have 2 cousins and we're very similar in age. Like I think my youngest cousin is maybe 2 years younger than me, and my oldest cousin is 9 months older than me. So like it's my sister who's 3 years older than me. So like we're like boom, 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 boom within a couple of years of each other. So we all kind of got along.
Yeah,
as much as we could as kids, but now as adults we like get along really well. So
I'm sure, like, because I see it with my 3 kids, there's only a year age gap between my eldest 2, and then there's like a 6-year gap between the other one, and you can tell like the 2 are very close to each other.
Yeah,
because they're only a year apart, and they haven't hit puberty yet. So I know they're gonna go through that phase that we all did, where you're like a strange alien. You don't know what the hell's going on.
You're alone.
Yeah, and they're gonna argue and they're gonna fight, but like, I hope they have what you have, is when they get to be an adult, that they just kind of like have that bond of, this is it, this is us.
I think that happens over time, because I mean, it was a realization that you had to kind of come to organically. Once you kind of realize that your parents are aging, and pretty soon it's going to only be you and sister, and y'all are going to kind of have to continue, not necessarily continue it the same way they did. Me and my sister lived completely different lives than how my parents were brought up. Obviously different times, different everything. she married, I guess, out of the race. I married out of the race. My wife is white. Her husband is half Chinese, half white. Like it. So we all kind of splintered and went different directions. So there's no longer like that cultural unit
Right.
that could be like reaffirmed year after year after year, because the cultures are completely splayed out now. So that was not necessarily like on purpose. I was attracted to who I was attracted to. She's attracted to who she's attracted to, and we just kind of found the people we found. So, but I even historically, I never really dated Iranian women. I was always just more partial to white. I don't know why. Most of my girlfriends were white. I think I dated one Indian girl a long time ago, but I was like in middle school, so I hardly qualify that as like, real dating.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, if they haven't heard this, your bit about how you and your wife met, and then the whole thing about you guys having kids, and I remember that from the Ari Shaffir show, and that was one of the funniest bits ever.
Was it which one was it?
Well, like you two couldn't make a cute baby, and it was based off of your racial background, her racial background, and like combined.
Because she's a redhead, she's a fair-skinned, freckled-faced redhead.
Exactly, because I don't want to say your bit because it's so hilarious, and I just want people to know. But like, it was one of the funniest bits.
Oh, good.
And I was like, this is really cool. Because a lot of guys, especially nowadays, people are afraid to like talk about a woman in a different way or something because you're gonna get canceled and all that bullshit. But you're like, you leaned into it, and it was really funny the way you leaned into it. So I appreciated that.
Also, I'm not really attacking her. I'm just making observations of her physical feature. I'm not saying like she's less than. Or I think that's where you kind of like say that when comedy's under attack, it's usually the comments and the situations that are maybe a little bit taken out of context and maybe a little bit blown out of proportion, but sometimes delivered with malice intent that are like acerbic or like kind of hard to hear because they're making someone less than. I'm just making physical observations on someone. And I think where kind of a lot of people go wrong is they'll lean into something and make that the butt of the joke. But really, the crux of that joke is I'm fearful for what this kid would look like because we're not two like stereotypical pairs. Like we're not going to be two people that like you can predict what the baby looks like because I haven't seen one up until this point. So
no, I get what you're exactly. I get what you're saying. But I think that back to that point is like, I think a lot of the part of cancel culture is mislabeling if a joke or a comedian has malice intent. I genuinely don't think most do. There might be a small percent, and you would know way better than I would, but I think what I've always found from comedy is that it's meant to bring to light a lot of things that we don't want to talk about and put a funny spin on it so it makes it a little bit easier to talk about. Yeah. Like to open to break the ice of after that show, you can have a conversation amongst your friends or with your spouse about an uncomfortable subject that should be spoken about.
Yeah. Like going back to like content and when stuff is deemed offensive or not offensive or something like that. Sometimes comics do have malice intent. Like they'll say stuff hatefully because they feel that way. The thing is, people are kind of entitled to feel whatever way they want. Now, do they need to bark that into a microphone at an open mic at 10:30 p.m. at a bar in front of people who could possibly perceive it the wrong way? Probably not. Are they going to do it anyway to kind of test the joke to see if it works, to see if it's got the shock value that they're looking for, or what have you? There's a million different reasons why people say dumb shit. I've written jokes that kind of I angled wrong, and I was like, fuck, that came off a little misogynistic, or that came off a little sexist, or something like that. And I'll either pivot or I'll just be like, I still like kind of the way it's written. I'm going to keep going with it. But then, I mean, for me, the barometer and the litmus is always the audience. So if I say something like that and they're like, nah, or I'm only getting like partial hits here and there from people, it's not a strong joke then. So either I need to kind of table it and kind of sit on it for a little while and then revisit it. Sometimes you'll write an entire bit and then you'll table it for a long time and then you'll write a new bit and you'll pull something from that old bit, a line even, and you'll never use that old bit again, but you'll use something that you wrote ages ago because it fits better in this thing, and now that joke is like your new closer or something like that. It's interesting how you can kind of like build on your old sets and kind of use stuff in the past. Or some comics, they'll do something, they'll put it out they'll film a special, put it out there, and they'll never visit those topics again, and they'll like go to something completely different or something like that.
Which is, I've heard that from like when you listen to podcasts with different comedians like Andrew Schultz, Joe Rogan, Kill Tony, any of these guys that have like a big, massive audience and talk about their process, you hear that a lot about them. They're like, once I do this special, that's it. Now I have to create an entire new 60 minutes and got to be on the road and got to be writing all the time. And so what I wanted to ask was like, what is your process of how do you write?
Yeah, everyone has a different process. Yeah, I keep notes on my phone and then I try to write it a little longer form, like a little later. I've kept it mostly digital. Some people swear by handwriting it. I go back and forth between mediums. Sometimes, I have several notebooks, but I also have, one Google Doc or something like that. So I'll put everything in one place, like from the idea.
Okay.
That's like, I just kind of like vomit it out in roughly 1 or 2 lines, just a premise or something like that. And then I'll kind of like think on it and write on it a little bit more. And then I'm one of those people that it's a little chaotic and unorganized. Like I'll write from the stage a lot. Like I'll just go on and perform it and see what hits, what didn't. And I'll just tweak and reiterate. And when something works, I'll keep it. When a portion works and one doesn't, I'll switch it out. I'll shorten it. I'll truncate jokes. I'll move them around or I'll notice something fits better when it's delivered here versus here. I write a lot from the stage and I don't mind that, but you always look to the other side of like what really like meticulous and disciplined comics who are like very scripted and like they write out, a setup and then like a punch and they know exactly like their economy of words is really good. I'm verbose as it is. You'll find this out obviously within minutes of talking to me, but there are people who they're far more efficient. They're far sharper writers. I like really, really respect people like that because I'm way the opposite. So I try to take notes from people like that. I'll find myself really gravitating. The comics I like are very written. Like they're very good writers. The comics who I tend to not like as much are the ones that are a lot like me. Perfect example would be like someone like Sam Morril or Mark Norman. I like those two guys a lot.
I love them.
Very, very funny. They're also very written. They write every day. They write continuously. They perform enough. They write. They figure out the best way and the best words to deliver a joke.
Right.
Kevin Hart, very chaotic. He's mostly telling stories. He's super funny too, and he's also just like a character. Like he's extremely funny. He's a very likable person and stuff like that. But I don't know his process, but my assumption based on his delivery is that because I've seen sets from Sam. I've seen the same set from Sam and Mark like multiple nights and multiple times. So,
okay.
And I notice how similar it is. There are pivots and there are like crowd work instances and there are things that change. Sure. Maybe a little tonation and like a little delivery. But like, I guarantee you could do, Kevin Hart could be at Madison Square. He could have a 7 o'clock and a 10 o'clock show. You go to those two shows, they might be two completely different shows. So I'm more on that side. And I tend to like comics like that less. Like I would go to a Sam Morril show before going to a Kevin Hart show. Like if offered for free tickets or something like that, because I like Sam so much and Kevin reminds me of me a little bit too much in the sense that it's a little bit more like free form. And
I get it.
Yeah. So it's kind of like you always respect the side that,
So you like the Attels of the world, like Dave Attell.
I like the people who are really,
Stephen Wright. You remember Stephen Wright?
Yeah.
Oh, man, he was so good.
Yeah. Stephen Wright and Mitch Hedberg were like the ones I started listening to. Like Mitch Hedberg, I think was probably one of the first, outside of like seeing clips of like Richard Pryor and George Carlin and stuff like that when my dad would have like late night TV on or something. That I would see that, but I was too young to know what stand-up was. But I think the first time I saw or heard a stand-up special, or like back then, they were all like on CDs or something or on tapes. The first like album I maybe bought off like or downloaded off Napster or something like that was Mitch Hedberg's at the Laugh Stop in Houston, because the intro is just the host who is like, Mitch Hedberg is like somewhere nowhere to be found because he was always just like kind of aloof and wherever, and he was trying to buy time before like this man's recording something, right? And that's how like nonchalant he is about it. And so he's like trying to kill time until Mitch Hedberg gets out there. So he's like, "Welcome to the Laugh Stop. I think Mitch is on his way," or maybe he's not because he's trying to he's like really fumbling through like this intro, and then finally, I guess he catches word that Mitch Hedberg's in the wings, and he's like, "Okay, cool, now welcome to stay Mitch Hedberg." And Mitch Hedberg comes on and just smashes. So like it's such a funny album. So that was probably the first exposure I had to it.
I think my first exposure probably was Carlin.
Yeah,
and it wasn't a CD or a tape. It was actually, I was a little bit older, but it was on HBO when they had like their comedy specials. Because HBO used to be the king of comedy.
Yeah, like HBO specials used to be the ones you wanted, and now it's like a gajillion different platforms is what would be desirable for most.
And what I've seen right now is like everybody's doing the whole, let's just pop it on YouTube and see where it goes.
You can self-produce an album.
or like the Louis C.K. model of like, I've got my website, you can pay me the X amount of dollars, which is cheap. It's not that much.
No, yeah, he doesn't charge a lot.
And he's like, here, if you want to pay a premium, I'll give you access to my entire catalog. And if you want to just buy the one, you buy the one. But he seems to be doing really well with that.
He's not hurting. He also from his projects pre his scandal and stuff like that, like,
which was,
that actually kind of, that bummed me out a lot, because he was the apex predator, and it was one of those moments where like you see your hero being disgraced left and right, and you're just kind of like, God damn it. Like, it'd be like the same if something terrible came out about The Rock. I'd just be like, motherfucker. Like,
but the redemption story.
Yeah, I mean him coming
Grammys back to back 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And doing the specials. And then he kind of also lit I think so. I mean, inadvertently, he lit the flame of, is the Me Too movement always right? Or do we not need to be so quick to jump to completely ruin a person's life?
I don't know that it was Louis C.K. that really kind of like sparked any doubt in the Me Too movement, but there was definitely like some scandal, someone who was like, really drugged through the mud, and it turns out that the accusations weren't true, but it wasn't anyone who was in the comedy community. It might have been someone in show business, I don't remember, but like someone was disgraced, and then it was found out that like the person who created the stories about him was just doing it to damage them or something like that. So that probably sowed some doubt, and then there's always been people who doubted it. The whole instance with Louis C.K. was, albeit very just weird to hear, and I mean, everyone had always heard buzzes about it. Even me, at such a low level in Dallas at the time that all this stuff was coming out, like would hear whispers about that kind of stuff in New York.
So mainly in the comedy world,
mainly like in the
amongst yourselves.
And there's other comics who, like, I won't mention nothing or won't hear, but like that you hear stories about that you're just like, oh damn, did they really do that? Fuck. All right, well, I hope if that comes out, that's going to be damaging type thing. Nothing that really comes to mind off the top of my head, but like I've definitely heard stuff. I just kind of blow it out of my mind. I'm just like, you know what? All that is right now to me is hearsay, unless someone proved something, and if it's proven right, then like, damn, that sucks. Like, they shouldn't have done that, or they shouldn't, whatever.
Right.
The thing about Louis' story that was disheartening to me is there were a lot of instances where he would, like, in an effort to kind of cover something up, he would completely destroy or completely just dead stop someone's progression in career in New York. Like, there were a lot of girls that were like comics that he did what he did in front of, and then when they were like when they would come out against him, he would just be like, I'll absolutely ruin you. You won't get booked in this city anymore. You won't get booked in this country anymore. And I'll see you that. And I was just like, that's, I don't know how many people he did that to. I'm not going to make an assumption there. I'm also not going to make an assumption that actually happened, because I have no clue.
Is there any truth to any of that?
Is
there anything that kind of came up?
The accusations who came out from a lot of the people, some of them were just like, female comics in green rooms or something like that. Like, so I would put merit behind it. Now, if I'm not there to see it, can I say it with 100% certainty? No, I try not to speak in absolutes. But if that's what happened and those were his actions thereafter, I think that's really low, because my vantage point on comedy is like, if you're doing this, it's fucking hard. So if you're doing it and you're trying to do it well, I got respect for you and I want you to succeed. I also want to succeed, but I'm also not like super cutthroat. Like, I'm not going to step on your head to get over where I want to go. I think in due time, if you're good enough, you'll get there. So when you do stuff to like if I did something to damage someone's reputation here because I was out of spite or I just didn't like them, I'd feel really bad about myself. And I would, I imagine that person would see it as unjust too. So, yeah.
And I think something that I've also just listening to, again, other comedians and then the way they speak, is like, there's also been like a cultural shift in your community of, before it was, and I think Rogan said it the best, is like everybody was trying to get that TV show or that late night spot, and it was like, there's only one or two available. There's only a couple of Seinfelds in the world and Roseanne Barrs in the world. But now that things have shifted into online platforms, podcasting, and Instagram and all this stuff, I think you guys are, and correct me if I'm wrong, more of a community that's trying to help empower each other, and it's kind of like the old guard that just needs to let it go, where it's like, is it that way?
So there's a lot of what you said. There's kind of like two different facets to what you said. First off, is the landscape kind of transitioning from like comics trying to get famous to then get on TV shows or then like get a sitcom deal or something like that? That still exists, but it's less so, and it's kind of a little fast tracked, because I mean, if you can kind of see how it would run now, if you are a comic and you perform several good sets, you record several good sets, you chop up those clips and you put them on Instagram Reels. They get a lot of traction. They get a lot of shares. They get a lot of follows. You get a huge following. Followers start coming to your shows. You gain popularity. Agents notice. You get picked up. You get TV deals type thing. Like the port of entry is different now. So like instead of just going only, grinding, hitting the road, only like you have to be seen to be seen. You have to be physically seen in order for an agent to give a damn about you or something like that. Now, I mean, the average casting agent or something like that can scroll through Instagram Reels, wait till they see a look they like and someone acting the way they like or a comedy bit they enjoy, and then they can contact that person and boom, that person's life can be completely different. So it's a lot easier to get on people's screens and in front of people nowadays. But the challenge is still, like, you're right, there are only a few TV shows. There are only a few sitcoms that are going to need a few actors. Like, the pool is still really small, but there's a lot of creative outlets. Like you can create YouTube series. You can create a YouTube series that has 70 million followers. Mr. Beast does
500 million plus on all of his platforms at this point.
What does he do? He's just doing the wackiest shit. Like he's buying islands and giving it away, or he's having these ridiculous challenges and giving away like Escalades and stuff like
Chocolate Factory. He gave away a chocolate factory.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the thing is like people are stimulated by fast, high velocity stuff now. That's why the clips you see are so quick, so fast, so short. Not a lot of people are sitting and watching specials. Even shorter sets, 5, 3, 7 minute clips. That's a big ask. That 7 minutes better be fucking good, because no one's gonna sit while they're waiting for their Smoothie King and watch a 7 minute clip. They're gonna sit and scroll through Reels where they're getting 45-second little doses here and there. So, and
is there somebody that kind of like made that happen? Was there like a comedian that was just like on top of all that you can think of?
It was the platforms. It was comedians utilizing social media to first promote their shows, and then realizing with the evolution of how TikTok and Instagram and Facebook started to operate with faster, keep your attention longer type models, that they were like, oh, okay, there's a real opportunity here. And there wasn't any one comedian. I think like kind of collectively we all
started doing it.
Yeah, there's no like father or mother of Instagram reel comedy or anything like that,
or the they them of that,
or the non-binary comedy. Yeah. I mean, it could be any situation. That's another thing. It's really kind of anyone can do it now. Not necessarily that like non-binary or
No, I know what you're saying.
Any line couldn't, but like you can never see a stage and just perform. Like, and this literally does happen, dude. There are people who they get extremely a huge following on TikTok, and then they start reaching out to clubs and asking to sell their shows out at the clubs, do a weekend at the club. And this is someone who, mind you, maybe does like funny makeup tutorials in their room, or they have like a bunch of characters, or they're really good at doing like those transitions, or they have some sort of shtick or some character they play on TikTok that just gets a massive following. They then book a show. They don't know how to do stand up. They sure as shit can't cover 45 minutes. And they'll get booked. They're what I call like there's like a barrier that you got to ask now when you see someone has like a huge TikTok following and they ask to be booked on a show or a club nearby. You're like, is that person a comic or are they a TikTok comic? And you're implying with that question that are they someone who is a seasoned writer and comedian who's performed on stage before and can cover 45 to an hour of coherent jokes, or is this someone who just got 3 million followers on TikTok from doing these like hilarious sketches and now thinks that they can cover the time at a club? And what happens almost always is these people get booked once. The club sees that, they brought the audience, they sold it out, but like the content wasn't really there, and they floundered around on stage for 30 minutes and then they bail early and they still got it. Like it's a really interesting dynamic to see. It happens all the time.
Most people don't understand. Comedy has an actual structure to it. Mm-hmm. There needs to be a setup, a delivery, and then you might want to tag it and go back to it and play with what you were talked about even 45 minutes ago. Some people start an entire comedy special with a joke, and then they'll circle back an hour and a half later to it to close with something that goes way back to that first joke. And you're like, you are a master.
Yeah. Because people love callbacks.
And it's like, man, I can still remember that entire joke, an hour and a half of you continually making me laugh. And at the end of it, you go back to that callback, and it's just like, damn.
It's such a good way to end jokes, or such a good way to end sets.
But it's so different from, just talking shit with your buddies at a party, or which is what I kind of look at the internet in a lot of ways of, like TikTok and Instagram and Twitter. It's kind of like you're talking shit for a lot of it, and you can gain a massive following.
Sure.
But that's because you're behind a screen. You have a camera in front of you. You don't actually have to look at the people in front, in this, you know, in the...
You're not writing anything.
Yeah, you're not writing anything, and you're not also standing in front of people on a stage. It's very different to have a camera in your comfortable space versus... This is not a comfortable space, especially if you're booking it the first time. It's gotta be crazy.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just they're not. All they can do is sell that room out. So because they make one mention of it on their TikTok and it
sells out.
It gets 3 million views. So like, you know, if I say I'm going to be in San Francisco doing, you know, whatever, you know, San Francisco Improv or something like that, like they'll I'm confident 300 people would show up. You know, if you had a massive following like that, it's not hard to.
Right. No, I get what you're saying.
But it's just wild how prevalent that's become. It's kind of dwindling, I've noticed a little bit, but there was a good tear there, like towards the tail end of COVID when TikTok really popped off, where it was like people were coming in and headlining like the Addison Improv, Hyenas, wherever. I'm like, who the fuck is that? And then I'll go and I'll look them up and I'll be like, God damn it.
Which, if you think about it, like for a business like the Hayenas or the Addison Improv, they're also hurting really bad during COVID. And they're like, you know what? If I can get a bunch of TikTok morons that don't care to show up and buy drinks, pay a door, I can keep the lights on for another month.
Yeah.
So my main guys,
I'm not blaming them.
Yeah, I don't blame them either. Like, because if you ever run a business, you understand that from the outside looking in, everything looks so pretty and nice, but on the inside, it's just dirty. There's a lot of stuff going on that you have to deal with.
It's
on
not
a regular
glamorous
basis.
to own a club, I bet. I mean, I don't know.
I've never owned a club, but I can only think about it as just like any other business where it's like when you get into the actual infrastructure that keeps that thing running, there's a lot of bullshit. And that's the other thing that I noticed when I was at the show with Ari, you, and
the middle guy, Youngblood.
Youngblood, yeah. I forgot his first name. Andrew, thank you. I don't know why I forgot it. I remember his last name. I was trying to remember his first name. Youngblood's a good... He's a really funny dude,
He's very funny. He's a good friend.
I love him. He's a great comic. But what I remember was that, like... Because I have a different perspective when I go to a comedy show. Like, I love to laugh, but I'm also looking at the crowd. I'm kind of, like, analyzing it for some reason. It's just the way, for some reason, my brain works. But I noticed there was, like, people that just refuse to laugh for the sake of refusing to laugh. And you're just sitting there going, like, how bitter could you possibly be that you came to a comedy show with a group of your friends and you refused to laugh because Ari made a fat joke, or, you know, you talked about a white girl with freckles or something, and somebody gets offended about that crap. And you're just sitting there going like, dude, seriously? If you think everybody in the world is targeting you, they're not. They're just trying to make people laugh.
I mean, those people are exhausting, and they're exhausted probably because they're constantly being offended.
So my question was going to be this, is like, you on the stage as the comedian, do you guys dial in on things like that? Does it bother you at all? Is there like an internal protocol that you have to try to deal with this?
Yes, we always notice it. Some comics will lean into those people and try to break them. Other comics will disregard. I think I'm about 50-50. Sometimes if I see someone is just arms crossed, like very like stern looking, I'll try to break them open a little bit, because that's also, it's fun for me. It's challenging. And it also breaks the rest of the room open, because you're just like, hey buddy, like everyone else is laughing. Are you broken type thing? And then like you get at them again, you poke at them a little bit, you find out a little bit about them, and you kind of turn them. You basically, you have to sell yourself.
Right.
And they're just the harder sell. I gravitate towards the people that challenge me the most.
Okay.
So when someone is tough to crack,
right,
that's interesting to know for me, because then I can tweak whatever I'm selling or whatever I'm producing to make it appealing to someone like that. So next time I come across someone like that, I can sell it to them. On like as far as like in comedy, those people are generally all the same. They're kind of sourpusses. They're, you know, maybe just like there because they were dragged there or something like that. But no, everybody wants to laugh. Everybody wants to have a good time at the comedy show, right?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I mean,
if to those people who are kind of tough to crack, I mean, some address it, some don't. I do it 50-50. So sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. If I'm other times I'll just focus on the side of the room or the area of the room that is enjoying me, and I'll just be like, okay, cool. If the rest of y'all aren't digging it, then I'm doing this for y'all type thing.
Right.
Yeah, you just find your own, and you don't get too offended by like, or at least I don't. Not at this stage. I mean, maybe initially when you were like, man, I wish I would have done better. I always wish that secretly, but like generally that starts to bother you less and less as time goes on. You're not as butthurt when like you didn't completely kill the whole room, or like that table was really not really feeling you. You don't internalize that kind of stuff. Eventually, you're just like, all right, well.
But it is detrimental right in the beginning, huh?
I wouldn't say detrimental. It's just you kind of cut your teeth. Like you get better and better at noticing it, and you get better and better at figuring out why, and then like it bothers you less and less. And then you eventually, like, you know, when you first start a sales job, you make a bunch of cold calls and you get a lot of no's and you get discouraged and you start to think that you're maybe not cut out for this. And then fast forward a year and getting 20 no's or a week of no's even means nothing. Like it means nothing to you because tomorrow might be better type thing.
To touch on that, let's go to your background. What did you do pre-comedy?
You can't live off of like a local Dallas comics income by a long shot. But that being said, I mean, my background straight out of college, I went into healthcare. I worked in like the physical therapy arena because I majored in kines. So I thought I was maybe going to go to PT school. Hadn't started comedy yet or anything like that. And then kind of bounced around some jobs, worked at a PT place. Then I started working in a different healthcare setting at a pathology lab. And then I completely switched out of healthcare into like more healthcare, like architecture and like planning. So I worked at an architecture firm, like placing medical equipment in hospitals and stuff like that and procuring and doing that stuff for like a bunch of different hospital projects in like the Bay Area.
See, up until you saying that, I never thought that you might need an architect to do the interior of like hospital equipment. But now that you talk about it, like an MRI machine, these massive things.
Yeah, you build the MRI wing around the MRIs. You place the MRIs and then you build the rest of the hospital
I've been told because they're so heavy and so they're impossible to get in once it's built, right? You put it in and you're done.
If you fuck something up structurally with the MRI build, you've fucked that hospital up. Really, man, I've seen it happen. Like
seriously.
Yeah. I mean, if something is fortunately, like when rubber meets the road and when like the nails are being hammered in and stuff, they've figured that kind of stuff out. But absolutely in the planning phases, we've had catastrophic failures where like things would be like, this is not going to work. Like that entire wing of the hospital is going to be magnetized or something like that. Like it's funny things like that made that industry really interesting. The only reason why I got that job was because prior to that I worked in the pathology lab. So I was like in this like healthcare equipment procurement wing of an architecture department that worked mostly on like hospitals in the BayArea and San Diego and stuff like that. So
and you were working in Dallas or were you in the Bay Area at that time?
We traveled every week. Like we were and I still had not like I had at that point I was flirting with the idea of I was very close. It was at that job that I started doing comedy.
So this is one evening. 10 years ago?
7
years
8
ago.
years ago, yeah.
Okay, 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I was still working at that architecture firm, and it was an architecture firm in downtown. So I was like right off like Pacific and St. Paul, like near that DART rail station over there, like in the heart of downtown. And then at that time, the Dallas Comedy House, which is where I started, was literally just like a stone's throw down the road. You just take like a bus one way, because I took like the bus in DART because I lived up in like North Dallas. So I just take the DART down and take buses around downtown. It was fun. And then I just got on the wrong bus one day and it went down to Deep Elm instead of taking me north to my DART stop. And I saw the comedy like arrow sign for Dallas Comedy House. And that's where I like,
it was like a sign from the universe or God. It's like, dude, hey, might as well.
Yeah, that's more or less my origin story. I literally wasn't paying attention one day, was just beat down from working like this just like really high stress architecture job that like the expectations were really high, and I was just like in a bad place generally in life at that point. And I was on the wrong side of the road. I forgot whether I was going north or south. I got on the same, number 3 bus or whatever. I was supposed to be going the opposite direction. Just took me and I realized it immediately, but I was just like, all right, I'll just get off at Good Latimer and I'll, walk to the other side of the street and get on the next bus 45 minutes from now. So I was content with what was about to happen. Right. But since I had so much time and I, saw the light, literally and figuratively, like I saw that little comedy neon sign. I walked in there and I was like, I knew that because when I was saying I was close to doing comedy then, I was like in the Googling phase. Like I was like, where are open mics in Dallas? Like,
had you written any material by then?
Yeah. I'd been keeping like a joke book or like basically premise ideas since college.
Is there a way that you learned how to set up the whole thing of
trial and error?
Because that's the one thing is like there really isn't you can go to school to learn an instrument, learn to be an actor. Doesn't mean you're going to be any good at it, but you can actually go where they will teach you this professionally. I feel like comedy classes don't really teach you much of anything. And I went through an entire comedy class in Burbank at Flappers Comedy Club in Los Angeles. I'm happy I took the experience, but it's like, it still didn't teach, like, what I have in my brain, I wasn't able to get down on paper because they were trying to structure it in such a way of like, you have to do it like this to be funny.
No.
And then I listened to like Chappelle or
Yeah.
CK or Sam Morril or Shane Gillis, any of these guys that are like funny, really funny. None of them have the same style.
Yeah.
None of them do it like this stupid school was supposed to teach you to do it.
No.
And then so I understood that. I was like, A, comedy's probably not in my wheelhouse. And B, it shouldn't be, you know, so stringently structured.
No.
It should have a structure, but not stringent.
I think there's merit to the, you know, premise being an overall idea of a joke, a setup being the setting that you've set for the joke to create an expectation, and then a reversal or a punchline to then flip the expectation on its ear or somehow blindside the audience in some way. That's the general formula.
Yeah, everybody's going left, but you go right, and that's where the fun is.
Yeah, or everybody's going left and you go up, or everybody's going left and you go to Mars. Like you completely change the landscape. However you want to do that is fine. There's no rhyme or reason to how you do it, why you do it, in what cadence, in what voice, as a character, not as a character. Or does it have to be topical? Can it be made up? Complete. There are comics who every word out of their mouth is a lie when they're on stage. They are just spouting off the most hilarious lies you will ever experience your entire. None of those stories have happened to them. None of the people in the stories are real. It is all, but it's something that they've written and they think it's funny, and it is funny. Like if had that universe existed, that'd be hysterical. But it's just something that they're winging. I mean,
I think that have you seen William Montgomery?
Yeah,
the guy. I think he does that.
He
that's
does.
his type of comedy because like.
Yeah,
he'll start a story with like, when I was in medical school. You're like, dude, William, we know you weren't in medical school. And, and it just goes really deep off of that. And but he's so funny.
Yeah,
I think part of what makes him so funny is that just his getup. And I don't know if it's truly the way he is or it's just he's leaning really heavy into this. It almost looks like a lie on stage, and you're like, nobody really dresses like this today, or like speaks this way.
William does.
Yeah, but like for the general person sitting there watching it, you're thinking like, this is a guy that's like really, really funny because he's leaned so much into his physical funniness. Like his characteristics are funny too.
Yeah. So he's very much like an absurdist character. Like I know William, like we're acquaintances, and I've like hung with him in Houston. He came down to Dallas a little while ago. Or many years ago rather. And he, I'll tell you that when I met him at least, and I haven't had a whole lot of like FaceTime with him, like, you know, off stage or out of a performance environment. But when he shows up for a show or a mic, or at least in my experiences with him, he doesn't break character. Like he remains the same.
Okay.
Very reminiscent of like the Kaufmans and the comics who would play something. Andrew Dice Clay, like he wasn't really like that.
Clay.
Larry the Cable Guy, not really like that particular character. Like there are people who kind of play something on stage, or they act a certain way because that's a stage persona, or that's kind of the way they communicate. And you know, I'm told William's a great guy, super nice. I also think that, you know, he's capable of being level-headed and normal. Like if he has to go to the doctor or handle something serious, I don't think he's going to be like, I owned a La Quinta in Arizona. Like I don't think he's going to pop off.
Right.
But like that's the way he's chosen to carry himself when the moment I guess he gets into these like clubs and shows and stuff like that. He was hilarious the first time I met him at an open mic that I ran, and William was like in a neck brace. And wearing like, obviously the most ridiculous stuff ever. Like he just got dressed in the dark or some shit. And he maintained the story the entire night. Would introduce himself as William Montgomery. And the first words out of his mouth was that like he was having a lot of troubles at the La Quinta Inn that he owned in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Like he just kept telling a story and a narrative all night long. He went on stage, expanded on it, got off stage, kept talking about it. Like he just never stopped. That's definitely not true. Also, he didn't need the neck brace. Like it was just something he was wearing because he thought it was funny. I mean, like
that's what I really love about someone like a William Montgomery. There's so few of them, like Kaufman, Andy Kaufman, and Jim Carrey's portrayal of him was really cool.
Yeah.
But like when you look at Montgomery, like every time you hear him, it's always something funny, and it's always a story that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. As far as like if you try to connect it back to anything else he's ever said, none of it ever makes sense. But I think that kind of like makes it almost like the lore of William Montgomery, like the mystery of it is. It just makes it funny.
Yeah,
I love the guy, and like you see his parents, and you're like, wait a second, how did these normal people make you?
Yeah, I mean he's I think is he from like Memphis? He's from Tennessee. I know he went to Tennessee. He's also like he's really educated. Like if he didn't complete some sort of master's or was in some sort of like finance or law, or I don't know what exactly is, but like he was poised for, you know, a job
somewhere.
Well, a job will definitely greatness somewhere, but also like maybe perhaps like a job more white collar or something. And then like, I don't know what the transition was for him. Like I said, we're acquaintances. I don't know his full story, but he has excelled at comedy, but he's also, I'm told, a pretty intelligent guy. Like he's not like this, you know, dunce who's just making up characters. Everything he's saying, he's got like a through line for, or he's, you know, experienced somehow. I don't know, but I liked him early before he like was a Kill Tony regular or anything like that. That's when I'd met him. So, and
I think it's cool because you, as a comedian, I guess, get exposed to a lot of people before they become big.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, this is why I love what is happening with the internet. Like Sam Morril, Kill Tony, like Tony Hinchcliffe. I have no idea who the guy was until I heard about Kill Tony on, I think it was when he was they deleted his Instagram or his Twitter account because it had like the knife on there or something. This whole thing happened like for a certain time. He got suspended because there was a picture of a gun or a knife in his profile picture.
I think the logo for Kill Tony has like a knife in it or something.
Or it was just
pretty innocuous.
Yeah, or it was the
fucking logo.
It was something stupid like that. But then like it kind of hit them. Everybody was talking about it at some point, and then now I religiously follow Kill Tony because
bad publicity is publicity.
I love what he does with the, you get a minute and then we get to interview you a little bit, but yeah, I just like, you meet all these comedians, and that's why I'm so grateful for the internet to exist, and podcasting and Instagram is like, you get to be exposed to a lot more people versus you being in the comedy world. You get early exposure too.
Yeah, and you see people like at different stages and stuff, which is really fun to watch.
And do you guys recognize as comedians like who you think will blow up and be the next top 100 really good comedians now or in the past?
I think like when you see there have been people in Dallas who I think would be really, really good and have broad appeal, but I've been wrong about. And then there's been people who I've been like, maybe, and they've like grown in popularity type thing. There are also some people that like I'd seen early, and then I kind of had not seen them in a while, and then I'd see them again, and they'd come back, and then boom, they like hit some sort of stride that's like really good. I mean, I think sometimes to some extent, like you got to kind of find your voice, and also think your voice can change depending on your life. You know, if you start comedy when you're single and you are fast forward 5 years and now you're married with a kid, your sets are different. Yeah. So I mean, I guess continuing on that, we got here somehow, but like continuing on. So after all those like professional jobs and like working at the architecture firm and stuff like that, I broke out into like the tech space with working with a startup that was like, it was an app. It was like a more or less like a teleprompter, like video app or something like that.
Are they still around?
No, they absolutely fizzled out. Also, I was the third guy in, so the intent was to basically have me be like the director of sales and operations for that.
Okay.
And I was way not qualified. I was the furthest from qualified. They just needed someone to sell the product and hawk it to like these different entities and stuff like that. So I did that for a little while, but being in that tech space and being kind of like in that, I went to a lot of trade shows. I was working a lot with like app developers and computer programmers and stuff, like testers and whatnot. So I got to speak that language and lingo. And then I found just another young tech company in Dallas, also kind of like down the street in Deep Elm, because there's a little hub there where there's like 2 or 3 like kind of medium to now maybe a little larger tech companies that are, start here, but they have clients all over the nation and stuff like that. So because software companies, they can be based anywhere and you can just have a ton of stuff. So I worked in that space for a little while, and then COVID hit, and then the sales job I was at was for an e-commerce platform that was, the entire business model was hinged in like selling apparel and merchandise for like group events and group outings. And when COVID hit, group events and group outings just stopped happening. So like these e-commerce stores for these events and sporting events and stuff like that weren't needing to be put up. So that essentially decimated the industry that we serviced. So in effect, basically they cut the long tail. They said like, hey, we don't need as big of a sales staff. Marketing can be cut to a fourth. They kept everyone for the most part in like the development and like, product and website maintenance and stuff like that. But they cut like anyone with a small account in customer service. They cut like, half the sales force. And like, I was there, I was one of the more senior salespeople there, and I wasn't necessarily bad, but I remember having had not very ideal past like 2 months.
Okay.
And I think they very much made the decision on who to cut and not based on like the past 60 days. And, you know, had they taken my whole past into consideration and like just my general tenure and like kind of stature in the sales group, because I was like one of the bigger guys, because I'd both been there the longest. I had the best relationship with the manager. Like we all got along really well. The whole team did. Maybe had that been considered, they wouldn't have asked me, but they did because like, oh, hey, Shahyan hasn't been doing well the past couple of months, which I get from like a business standpoint. But I'm kind of thankful for that, because then I took everything that I enjoyed doing or was only able to do in a part-time capacity, and I kind of flipped it into the main revenue streams. And that's where I started. I got my personal training certification and started training people in their garages and at parks since gyms were closed.
Right.
I was managing to make like a few bucks doing that. My wife still worked. She worked for a municipality at the time, so her job was secure.
Okay.
And we planned all of our finances off of one of our income. We made about the same amount of money. So we planned everything, how we bought a house, what we budget, how we buy groceries, all that stuff off of one of our incomes. So the intent was that like at least half of both of ours or one of ours entirely was going to savings. So
it's really smart. And on
we did
the
that
off
on
chance
accident.
if something really shitty happens, like this situation,
we didn't even consider
you can
something.
easily ride out the storm because only one of you has lost your revenue.
Bingo.
Stream.
So that was very fortunate that
Her
we did that.
decision or yours? To set it up.
Honestly, it was just we fell into that. Like it was like when we were shopping for a house. Originally, I was just gonna buy something, and this was before we were married, and I was gonna maybe like get a quarter of the money from my parents, and they were gonna it was gonna be an investment property basically.
Okay.
And then we got a little bit more serious. We started and then we went to buy the place together. And I don't know, we weren't trying to get anything lavish. We weren't trying to buy something to the border of our budget. We like knocked that way down by, tens of thousands of dollars to be like, let's just get something modest that we know, at least one of us could afford easily.
And how long ago was that?
Pre-2020, probably 2018, 2019.
Oh, you got it at an amazing
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Now your house is worth a lot more.
I mean, so it's a 2-bedroom condo in downtown. So like where everything is being built up. I'm never going to let go of this.
You're
place.
prime real estate. You can just rent it out if you move into get kids and all the thing, and you want to have whatever
a larger space,
a backyard or whatever it is, which is great, all that. But
yeah, it's not necessary.
Honestly, my kids don't like this house.
Yeah.
We bought it. We lived here since, like I said, July. Neither myself, my wife, or my kids like this big house.
Yeah, it's big. I mean, it's big. There's a lot of house here, a lot of maintenance, and stuff like that.
It's not that. It's just we came like the previous house in California was also smaller than this, fairly smaller than this, but still big for California standards. Mm-hmm. But the one before that was a small 2-bedroom apartment that we rented, like 1,000 square feet.
Yeah,
and like literally, my older ones, had a conversation with us. They were like, "Can we please move back into a small apartment?" And I was like, why? You guys have your own bedrooms, you have a playroom, you got all this stuff that didn't exist. Like, yeah, we don't want any of this shit. They're like, we really like being in a small apartment.
That's wild. That's kind of cool though. I mean, like that's how cohesive they are. They just like to be in the same space with one another.
And then my wife and I had the same conversation. We're like, do we really? Because you buy into this whole like the American dream of the house, the white picket fence, blah blah blah, and all this stuff. And then my wife and I both came to the conclusion, like probably like you and your wife did, was like, I think we want something smaller and more modest because this just doesn't do it for us. You
definitely sell this place very fast. Castle Hill places sell real quick and sell real good. So
that's our thing. Is like we thought we wanted this, and then we did the whole thing. Obviously, buying it, moving it, and then after 6 months, we were like, I'd rather have a small apartment.
Maybe search around a little bit. Yeah.
Be closer to Dallas, like because Highland Park, Preston Hollow, and all that stuff. The shops and everything. We really like going. We're not homebodies. Neither myself or the kids. We love going out all the time. So I'm like, why don't we just do that? So that's probably our plan for sometime this year.
Those areas you just named are pretty cool. Like those, and they've got great normal like single family homes that might be a little bit smaller and more your speed and stuff.
Yeah,
because like everything is a little more compact downtown because it's a little more compressed. Like everything's in a smaller area. Obviously, the high rises in downtown, everything's building up.
I see that.
Short of like, so I live near Deep Elm, and there's an area of Deep Elm. There's a street called Swiss Avenue, and there's a lot of like old Victorian style houses and like old, very like the kinds of houses that have like a carport on the side and then like a backup house. Yeah,
those humongous ones where they had like the staff house also back in the day.
Yeah. So those are the ones all off Swiss Avenue. Now some of those are houses with one owner, and some of them have actually been gutted on the inside and quadded up. So they'll be like a quadplex. Or, 2 on it or something like that. So
interesting.
Some of them are like that, some of them aren't. It just kind of depends on which one you fall on. So, but as far as like buying the house and budgeting and all that kind of stuff, we very much lived like well within our means. So much so that my mom was like, she was like when I was going, because she works in like loan, she's in like the loan industry.
With finance. Yeah. Okay, cool.
She's a loan officer. So when she was reviewing our paperwork, but someone else, to avoid conflict of interest, was actually processing our stuff. So it was at her agency, but like her business partner was doing it. But she was like reviewing everything and like basically kind of spoon feeding it to the other lady to just kind of like sign and get done. But she was like, I was so proud of y'all for like buying well under your means, because I saw both of your incomes, and I saw the house ranges, the price ranges you were going for and what you were going to put down. And she was like, I was really like, I didn't realize I'd raised such a like financially minded, like sound son. I thought, I was like, what did you think I was going to like try to get like a $400,000 house like off the income I was making? Could I have afforded it? Maybe. But would it have been a stretch? Would we have not like been able to afford groceries? Yeah. What kind of life is that?
You're gonna have heavy months. Like, and I know that from personal experiences. Like, you just punch up too much, and then you just like. But also those experiences, I mean, for most people, it's like you punch up too much, and then you have to kind of like settle down. Yeah. For some people, and I find myself in that category, is like high stress makes me just want to work harder. Yeah. It doesn't, like, you know how like something bad could happen and people just like lean into the bad, like your situation, you got fired, and in hindsight, it was probably the best thing that could ever happen to you. But, and a lot of people just, like, I had that same personal experience. I woke up on my birthday, my wife pregnant with our second son, and I got fired. Literally just woke up on my birthday, hey, sorry, your entire division is no longer part of this marketing company, because I did marketing for a while. And I was like, okay. And it was one of two things could have happened, is like you either sit there and you cry about it and just like lead into, oh, my life sucks kind of thing. Or you're like, where's the light at the end of this tunnel? What's going to happen? And like I drove Uber for 6 months, just trying to make ends meet. And I literally forced myself into the healthcare industry, just bullshitted my way into it. And I was like, okay, I can do this. Yeah. And I think, like, not that you bullshitted your way into it, but you leaned really heavy into like, hey, I like the personal training aspect. I could probably get certified and do really well with this. I like comedy. I can probably lean into this and see if there's a career out there for me, because the independence that you will build and gain from comedy world, maybe not today, but like a few years from now, maybe even next year, could be like that financial independence that is not a $400,000 house, but like a $4 to $20 million house. And you're like, cool, I'm chilling. I got no problems whatsoever.
Everything's nice and easy.
And it's like, you took that leap. And I think that's what I wish more people would take, that leap. Even if you fail miserably, take the leap, because it's better than sitting in your own misery forever and going like, this is what my life is. I'll never get, that executive job again, or I'll never do great again. And I'm just going to be shit forever.
I mean, it takes, if you're alone, it takes a lot of balls, because you have no one to help back you up at all. If you're married, it also takes a lot of balls, because it's like you're no longer necessarily making decisions just for yourself. You have to consult with someone on something like that, and that's a hard sell, dude. It being like, hey, real quick, I didn't realize that I've been in tech sales jobs where I was making,
X amount of dollars, whatever, yeah,
dollars in commission a year, and like had a base salary and insurance is really good. I realized all that was a thing, but what if I trained people in their garages during COVID, making $60 a pop or something like that? Like, no one's gonna fucking go for that. So she had to have a lot of faith in me, but there was also some other irons in the fire. Like, that's when I signed on during the pandemic, was when I actually went and contacted local acting agencies for like commercial work and stuff like that, which I've done a good amount of. And it was COVID, so some of their talent had dropped off. I kind of went through the agency I'm with right now. I kind of went through their catalog of people, and I was like, they don't really have anyone that looks like me. That's probably pretty good. Maybe I'll send them some headshots, a portfolio, maybe a funny sketch, a few sketches that I've taped with friends and stuff like that have some production value, and maybe like a stand-up clip to show that I have a little bit of range doing things. Packed that all up, had to sit down with them. This was like, we had to sit like 8 feet away in the lobby area to like have a meeting with one another. And they signed me on, and I was able to audition for commercials and do that stuff. And that stuff picked up pretty quick for me, because guys like me and you, we look real racially ambiguous, and people are very like, you can kind of fit any mold. And we're also the diversity hire in a lot of situations, which is good and bad. I kind of frown and smile at it, because I'm just like, am I just the token, or is it that, you actually saw value in what I was kind of offering or something like that? And, that's a completely different story. But that being said, a lot of commercials and productions and shows and things like that are looking for more diverse lineups. Like, they're not just looking for the cookie cutter, ads that were back in the day where it was all this, that, and the other. It's an interesting.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It was usually like it was the white mom washing the dishes in the morning, because this is like
always a heterosexual relationship, always two pristine kids,
and the two kids would run into the rooms like,
a boy and a girl.
Mama, when's Daddy coming home?
Boy and
we're
a girl.
really hungry.
Boy's
Blonde
older.
hair, exactly. There's like this formula that they followed, and it's like they would do this entire bullshit spiel. At the end of it, it would be like, come to Kroger for all your groceries, or some stupid shit like that, and you're like, what do you mean? Only white people that look like this go to Kroger? Obviously not. But then, like, now I think, to touch on what you're saying, is like, am I getting this job because of my talent, or am I getting this job because I look what your mold is supposed to look like? Pisses me off so much.
Oh, that's the show business though, dude. And like, here's the thing: it's not necessarily there's very little like affirmative action style casting. Like they're not just like, oh, we need an Asian for this particular part, so we need to cast someone of Asian descent. That's never the case. It's always like with acting. What I learned very quickly is if you audition for a part and don't get it, it's not because they already had checked the box of your race or your look, or they thought you were a horrid actor or something like that. It's always a thing like you just didn't fit the mold of what the person writing the commercial or the person who's filming how they envisioned the thing to look.
Because
there's a look they're looking for. There's something exactly that they want, and you just weren't quite it. So like coming from a sales background, coming from a stand-up comedy background, going into acting from there for like even just commercial auditions, I would fire them out left. Anything my agents gave me, I wouldn't even care how much it was for or what the read was or what part it was. I would do it immediately because I was just like, this is experience. I'm getting experience auditioning. I'm learning how to do self-tapes better, lighting, background, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I'm learning a lot doing all these, so I'm not going to say no to any audition. I'm going to go for everything. Well, when you cast a wide net like that, you land parts. So I landed a good number of parts, and some of them were SAG roles that were like national commercials and stuff that got aired all over the place. And those
so you're part of the union now?
And those pay well. So Texas is right to work. So it's disadvantageous to be in SAG if you live in Texas and you're a working actor in Texas.
Really?
So for that reason, I'm not. But I am always deemed, because every year after year with the agency, I've done at least one SAG commercial and either been on-camera principal or been an extra. Like, so I started with...
You made the bones for that year.
Exactly. So I started with Campbell in 2021. So through that year and then through 2022, I had done at least a couple of SAG spots. So I've maintained eligibility year after year. All it takes is just for me sending back the paper with my signature and sending the dues in or whatever, and then I can be union. But that would mean that I could only take union jobs in Texas, and that's
not a good thing right now.
No, dude, I would say here. God, probably in 10 auditions, 2 or 3 will be union.
The reason I was going to say is because I know SAG gives really great health insurance to its union members, right?
They also SAG jobs always pay better. It's better day rates. It's better, and you usually unless you're an extra or a background character, if you're on camera principal and voice on camera, you almost always get royalties too. Oh. So for however long that commercial is being bought by whatever ad agency or network, and if it gets rebought and boosted, like there's a Mercedes commercial that we filmed shortly after I joined the agency in 2021. It's still airing. And I'm like, because it's a very generic, like certified pre-owned Mercedes. There's no like specific messaging or year or any like year model year or anything like that. It's just, this is Mercedes. It's certified pre-owned. This is like the level of service Mercedes gives you or something like that. So it's a very like ambiguous commercial, and it keeps coming. They keep buying it, and I'm just like, keep buying it. I don't give a shit how many times you guys buy it. Keep doing it.
And I'll be honest with you, man. Like I do everything in my power to avoid commercials.
Oh yeah.
I don't have cable TV in the house. It's like YouTube Premium and Netflix and all that stuff. It's like, so I don't know any of your commercials.
But you still get ads though. You'll still get like Hulu ads. So you can buy your way out of all these ad platforms. You're just paying more for the platform essentially.
Right.
But for those of the mass majority of the people who like have just the level of membership into Hulu or YouTube to where like they still get the ads, buddy, you'll see me left and right because like there's some.
I bet. I mean, it's just
they air a ton. Like, I've had people in different states message me that they've seen the Mercedes commercial on everything from like CNN to MSNBC to fucking Comedy Central. Like, they've seen it on multiple networks because it was like one of the biggest. I didn't know any of this upon filming it, by the way. I just went in there just fumbling around and being like, oh, this is a cool set. Like, damn, there's a lot of camera people here. This seems like a bigger production than normal. Just completely unassuming. And then shortly thereafter, I never saw it. I had people tell me when they were seeing it in different places, and I was just like, oh, okay. And I went and looked up the ad agency that I was with. It's like one of the biggest ones in Chicago or something like that. I'm like, oh, okay, damn, that was a big one.
Which is kind of cool, I guess, if you think about it, because now you've got multiple places where people organically find you.
Yeah.
Because if they find you in a commercial and then like they stumble upon your comedy because they find something interesting about, oh, like the certified used Mercedes guy is really funny or something, or whatever it is. But like it's kind of cool because you have like multiple places where people can identify you and then kind of go dive deeper into who you are and what you do, and you're a comedian, and like, oh shit, he's really funny because he's got this thing and that thing. And, we all non-comedians will screw it up the next day when we're telling our buddies. Yeah. But that's kind of another way to get more people to you, because they're like, Tom really fucked up that joke, but I think that guy may have said something funny. Let me Google him real quick. Or Instagram him, and then you find you, and you're like, oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, exactly. And so none of I don't think any of the commercials would have been like ones that people would be, because they're like, the way copy is written is just so dry and like basic that it's just like, right. You say the thing and it's not anything that you can like flex any creative ability on. So no one's being like, oh, I got to look up that, like, I wonder if that guy does stand up, and like looking up the credits for a commercial. But if you do something that's a little bit more like whimsical and funny, like there are plenty of fun ads. Old Spice, all those people have like those. They hire comedic actors and stuff like that. Like there's so many serious roles and non-serious roles that like, different companies want, like the people who do Manscaped. I mean, they like sexy girls, buff dudes talking about shaving their balls. Like that's all it is. I mean, they're hiring people who can have some comedy chops on camera. Oh, you remember the Most Interesting Man in the World, the Dos Equis guy? Buddy. It wasn't meant to be funny, but it was the one-liners that were put into it were just hilarious. Like I don't know, whoever the writer was or the group was, they had some really funny content in there. My friend's been in a commercial with him. He did a Dos Equis commercial. Oh really? No, I'm sorry. It was for Favor, but the Most Interesting Man was in it. There were it was a Favor? It was like the delivery service app. Okay. Yeah. So and it was something where like it was a very third wall breaking thing. Like they were filming a commercial in the commercial. Okay. So, funny. And like the Most Interesting Man guy was there, and they were filming supposedly a Dos Equis commercial, but like he was playing the role of the director, and he was very like flamboyant and crazy. That'd be a really fun like commercial to get that like people would notice you on, and then they could then look you up a little bit later. But I mean, I get auditions for different things all the time. Sometimes it'll be something that you can see me front center in the screen, and then other times it's like I'm kind of on the side. I maybe have like a small speaking part, or I'm just like reacting to something, and that's it. I mean, commercial work is easy and brainless. I mean, it's one of the things, I don't know if you've noticed it about yourself, but your facial expressions are really funny. Yeah, a lot of babies laugh at my face. Not in a bad way at all, but like the way it's a weapon. Yeah, like the way you speak, it reminds me of Preacher Larson and Jim Carrey, where it's like, it's very animated, very cool. Yeah. We like to emote. It's because I don't know. I think we all just do it naturally, like the three you name. I don't think, because it doesn't seem like there's any thought put into it. Not in a bad way at all. It's like it just naturally kind of flows through your personality. It's organic. Like, it's organic. It's the way you speak, and it's like you can always tell when someone is doing it because that's who they are versus someone that's doing it because they're trying to lean into like a character or something like that, and you can tell. And I think that's what kind of differentiates like really good actors and really good comedians from the really bad ones. If you can emote. It's because I want to connect with you when I'm listening to you on stage, and the same goes when I'm watching in a film or on a TV show. It's like, do I get that facial expression from you? Like, do I get those nonverbal cues that make me really get into this, or do they not? So I love that about you. It's like really fun. I appreciate that. Have you seen any comics do that poorly, like deliver something very flat? Because there is a side of that can be funny, and then there's a side of it that's like, oh, you look like you're not even trying type thing. So I have, and again, I just like you, I don't like mentioning anyone's name. That's fine. Reason for that is like, you never know how far they are in their journey right now. They could still be looking for their voice. Yeah. And when they do find it and they lead into it, then they're amazing. Like a Joey Diaz kind of a character where it's like he's hilarious just by him. Yeah. His existence. Yeah. His voice, his everything is just hilarious. So I don't want to shit on somebody, but you see it all the time where it's like you see guys and gals that are just, maybe they're a couple of years into it, or they've done only a few open mic nights, and they're trying to, and what they mainly do is they mimic the comedian that they most appreciate. Yeah. Or, like they'll try to be like Kevin Hart, or they'll try to be like Chris Rock, or whoever it is, whatever, put famous comedian in box A and then followed by a guy that doesn't know what the hell he's doing in box B. It's exactly that.
Yeah.
And your hope is that please find your voice, because you could possibly be the next Dave fucking Chappelle.
Yeah.
But you just don't know it yet, because, hey, guess what? 30 years ago, Dave Chappelle didn't know he was Dave Chappelle.
Yep.
You could be that guy. It's just, I wish you would drop that persona of the other guy and become you. And it sucks. It's hard because it's the most painful thing you have to do is you have to look at yourself in the mirror, and then that mirror looks back because it's a bunch of us sitting there either laughing with you or not.
Yeah.
And I know it's painful, like, because that's why most people don't get on the stage.
Sure.
But that's, to your point of, like, I've seen some comedians that do that.
Super flat, super dry, not emoting much. Yeah.
But I'm noticing more with actors. I notice it way more in the acting world.
So, like, when they're, like, in interviews or something like that, they're just not emoting very much? Yeah, I can see that.
Whenever you see not that they're not emoting much, but it's like you're seeing an interview happening and you are not picking up the emotion that's supposed to be conveyed, because these people are still in some sort of a fucking character in their head.
Yeah.
I gotta be so-and-so, and I can't be me.
Yeah.
But, like, see, I don't see that with The Rock or Kevin Hart or Carey or Bryan Cranston or some of these, like, really funny, not always comedic roles, but, like, really funny guys.
Really good list of people, by the way, though. Like, people who are very, like, organically themselves.
Yeah. And you watch these people in interviews or just in settings where they're like, you know how, like, a hidden camera or something will catch them, or a hot mic, and you're like, you're just funny always, or you're just you.
Yeah.
So I feel like, I don't know. I wish more people would drop the character and be themselves.
You have no idea what this podcast could morph into. This is
never know.
Projected your first episode.
Which, by the way, I'm very proud of right now, because I'm having a lot of fun talking to you.
Dude,
so thank you.
No, of course,
so
dude.
much.
No, this is great. But you also don't, like, right now it's before they stood up, but that could be in whatever context, and it could be whatever type of entertainer, C-suite person. Like, the name can change. It can be the same. You can interview comics. You can interview whoever you want. What's great about creating something, and especially creating it from, like, start to where it is now, and, like, how your comedy develops, to kind of loop this back to what we were talking to earlier, like where you start and where you are today and what kind of pops off for you and stuff like that, is you never know what it is. So until you stop throwing shit at the wall and stop trying, you just keep trying stuff, and eventually something hits. And whatever, like, I'd say the key is like, as long as the thing that hits and that gains you the following that you desire is something that you truly enjoy doing, and you're not selling yourself out, that is great. Because I think the alternative, if you just pander and, your audience likes this, if you're always concerned about, the audience are going to want to see this, they're not going to want to hear that, and it keeps you from doing things that, like, basically kind of stifles you creatively, that to me is a hell. Like, that is a form of hell for me.
Well, yeah, if you're going to whore yourself out just to make a buck, like, okay, none of this is meant to make money.
No.
Like, I've invested.
Yeah.
But it's because I just wanted to have a fun creative outlet, and I wanted it to be comfortable and enjoyable for the person coming in to talk to me. This is it. This is all I want out of this. Now, if it grows with an audience of people that want to listen to it because they connect to the people I'm genuinely interested in talking to, and like you said, if this grows into something more than just comedians and, like, C-suite people or famous writers or whatever it is, like, most comedians and most people in the creative, like, the arts, because I think comedy is one of the most underappreciated arts that we have, because it's not a Van Gogh painting that you throw up into a museum, but it is so fucking important for the culture of just people in general, like our culture of humans. We need comedy because it always centers us, like you said, and it keeps us grounded. So on that, like, I'm curious, what is it that you see for yourself? Like, I mean, you're a pretty good comedian, you're hosting, but, like, was there ever a pipeline dream you had in your mind of, like, this is what I'd love to accomplish as a person? Just not just a comedian, but, like, this is where I want to get to one day. Yeah. So,
I tend to kind of make goals that are, like, you can kind of envision realistically. Like, if I were to just sit here and be like, doing arenas, that's great and that's cool, but I don't see a clear line to it.
I don't think anybody ever did, though. Because I'm sure, like, so arenas goes to, like, Segura,
Kevin Hart,
Brett Kreischer, Rogan, obviously. Sure. Like, but, dude, whenever you listen to these guys talk about their career to the point where they are now, and they're, like, mid 40s or early 50s, It wasn't that for a long time.
No, this thing's a marathon. So that's the reason why I just focus on. I feel like there are many markers that you got to hit, like checkpoints. Remember playing Mario as a kid, you reach the checkpoint. So when you die, you just come back to that checkpoint. If you die only in this game, it's permanent. Yeah. So I always just focus on the next checkpoint. So when I was starting out doing open mics, it was always like, okay, just deliver a 5-minute set that is good consistently for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Once that happened, okay, let's write a completely new 5-minute set. And then with those two that I can thread together, I'll have 10 minutes. Now I can actually start telling people, hey, I can do like a pretty good guest spot on your show that's unpaid or something like that.
Okay.
Then it's, okay, I have 15 minutes. That's pretty strong. Let me open let me be the host for some bar shows.
When does comedy start paying? Because you said unpaid.
Great question. Yeah. So it starts paying when you are, appealing enough to show producers and bookers who have the means to pay you. So like if you have someone who puts on shows regularly at a club or not, maybe at a theater, something like in whatever capacity, if they have the means of paying the performers, and you strike their fancy, they'll book you and you'll get a paid gig out of that. That can happen literally at any phase, dude. A new open micer can start tonight, deliver some stuff that's really fun. Somebody in the crowd sees them who books a show, and then they put them on their show and they make a little money that night. So there's no like set timeline on this. Like some people will immediately get a paying gig right out the gates. Now, is it consistent? Is it maybe just that one? Is it because that show was paying and they pay all the performers? That could be. You also do a lot of gigs where you don't get paid. You also get a lot of gigs where you get drink tickets or like an appetizer, what have you from the venue. But there's no, everyone's different and there's no set time to how much it pays. There's also no like levels to like, okay, you're now a $10,000 a year comic or a $20,000 a year or like making whatever, like it's all arbitrary. So like,
and is it just you like the more you hustle, the maybe the quicker you get there, or
yes,
the
so
higher up you can charge or something?
Initially, when you first start, if you're not on stages most nights, you're not getting any better. It's like taking free. It's if you handed someone who'd never seen a basketball before at all ever and put them on the free throw line and had them start taking shots, their first shots are going to be atrocious.
Yeah, you're not going to be Michael Jordan.
No,
just forget about it.
But if you have them do that every single night for 2 years, their shots are going to start looking pretty good to the point where they're probably going to start shooting, out of 10, pretty decent, 8, 9 buckets out of 10. They won't hit them all. And then you extrapolate that out in the future, they figure out different ways to shoot for themselves. They figure out different styles. They figure out they can hook shot it. Oh, they take a step back and shoot from the perimeter. Like they start doing it differently and they start syncing them. And that's when you start getting good and your art is unique now and you're hitting a stride. And that's when you're better and better and better. And people will pay to come stand by the court to watch you, to analogize this in basketball. Like there's no set time. It's just kind of when you get noticed. There's no expectation. Some people start getting paid immediately. Some people start and literally like within a year start like working clubs and stuff. Other people, it took me like a couple years to get into any club.
Okay.
So for a long time, I beat the pavement on bar shows and open mics. And those are the worst. Like that's the literal worst. Because like when you're doing open mics at a bar where no one there knew comedy was going to happen and they're not ready for it. They are visibly trying to ignore you because they are just there trying to have a beer with their friend and you're like telling dick jokes in the corner of this bar in Fort Worth. Like they hate it. They hate it.
And you could understand as a consumer why they would.
1,000%. Like if I was traveling to like Miami with my wife and then we go to a bar and it's kind of fun and then suddenly they cut the music off and some guy's like, hey everyone, welcome to Gator Bar's open mic now. I'd be like, no, fuck that, we're out of here. I'm leaving. I'm not sitting here listening to an open mic. That's hell on earth. Like I can imagine why people.
And you're in a happy place in that scenario. Yeah. You're with your wife on vacation.
Yeah.
Can you think about the countless people that go to a bar? Doesn't matter if it's regularly or once in a while because just shit's too much.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just life has gotten to the point where they're like, I need a beer or I need a shot and I just need to get the fuck out of my own head.
And I'm also in comedy, and the fact that like if that happened while I was truly on vacation and like really wanted to unplug from all that, like that would make me want to leave. Absolutely. Right. That also being said, if I was in Miami, my wife's also a comic as well. So like,
is she really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's how we met. So.
You got to tell me some info at the end of this of where I get to see you guys, and I want to know when I get to see her.
Yeah,
like
so she's I'd say she's a little bit more, especially now, because her dad passed away about a year ago. So she really kind of stepped, like after COVID, she stepped back a little bit. And then when her dad passed away, she stepped back a little bit more. So she kind of does it. She'll go to a couple mics every once in a while, and she'll still get booked on some stuff here and there from like friends who book shows. I would say that she enjoys doing it. And if she wanted to do it as more than a hobby, she could, but she is very much like, she's been around the block here. She's been doing it about the same amount of time as me.
Okay.
She knows who to reach out to get on shows if she wants, but she just kind of like, sometimes she's in the mood, sometimes she's not.
Honestly, if she ever starts doing it like the way you're doing
she does it from time to time.
I will definitely like to have her come on.
Yeah.
And just to see the difference between, because like you never get a husband and wife pair that are both comedians that you can get like this. I mean, you got Tom Segura and Christina, but that's kind of it. There's been a few rare instances. At least I can't think of many.
They're not married yet, but do you know Natalie Cuomo? I've worked with her at Hyenas one time. So she's a New York comic. Are you familiar with like the Skank?
Yeah, like of course. Skankfest and the Skank Comedy Crew.
Yeah, you know Louis J. Gomez then.
Yeah, of course I know him.
For a hot second, he and Natalie Cuomo dated. So this was like
I think I know what you're talking about.
Really pretty girl, very tatted up and everything like that. Like she's
it's exactly what Gomez likes.
Yeah, she is very funny, the sweetest person ever, like awesome person. Worked with her a couple times. She is now engaged as of like a couple weeks ago to this other comic in New York. Yeah, to this other comic in New York. And she just posted like a couple things here and there where like the two of them are going around in like co-headlining rooms, or maybe like they're just working together, or maybe she's headlining and he's featuring.
Do they work off of each other at the same time?
I don't know. I haven't seen any of their material since they've gotten together. I mean, it was a relative. I don't know how long they were dating, but I knew when I worked with her, she was no longer dating Louis anymore. So
okay.
After that, I think she met him somewhere along the line, and then they got engaged. I don't know what the deal was there, but like they go around. So that's like that's the only other one I can think of. And then there's some other like comics who are dating in the scene here and there, but those relationships come together, fizzle out, come together on another end, fizzle out. They date someone else, and then they date someone out of comedy. Like that's just workplace dating, more or less. Like if you work in a place long enough, you're around the same people.
Somebody that you like.
Yeah, same.
I think it's just like, also I may be wrong about this, but it's like I always feel like, especially if you're a husband, wife, or husband, whatever your relationship dynamic is, if someone wants to go into the arts or the entertainment world, the other person almost always has to take a step back to kind of like keep things going in the background. Yeah. I don't know if I'm wrong about this or not, but it's just kind of been my feeling. Like, even if entrepreneurs that are like, trying to be in the tech world, or just, they have an invention or they're doing something, like someone has to be behind the scenes making sure like that the person who's hyper focused on that dream is fed. It's just even saying that.
Yeah.
Like the bills still get paid because you're too far gone into your own head to remember that the water bill's going to get shut off if you don't pay it tomorrow, or something like that.
I've seen both. I've seen ones where the pairs work pretty well together and they're both excelling. And I've seen ones where, like there's another married couple, they live in LA now, but they came up here. My friends Jasmine and Alex, they both do comedy. Alex is still like a writer, but he writes like a lot of copy, and he's very funny, but he's harnesses like writing abilities for like commercial use and stuff like that.
Okay.
And he did stand up too, and I thought Alex was funny as well. Jasmine edged him out a little bit as far as like being a performer, being a big time performer. Alex was just a mechanic. He was very funny with like his words and stuff.
Right.
She's blown up a little more than him, so he's kind of taken a step back from stand up at least, but he still does writing. Like so that's an example where like maybe one kind of took a little step back from one facet of entertainment, and like where one was excelling a little bit. But I've seen a little bit of both. I've seen some people completely shut it off and focus on keep battening down the hatches and keeping the house in order, and while the other one is like doing the crazy thing. My wife does. She used to work for municipalities, and now she works basically for private sector, doing something similar to what she used to do for the city. It was all like in sustainability and like environmental.
So she's still part of the government, I guess.
No, so she.
No, she's private sector, not public sector.
Yeah, private sector working for like sustainability efforts for like a company here. So, but she, she's very passionate about that kind of stuff too. She went to school for environmental, anthropology, and then like public health and sustainability. Like that was what she really enjoyed doing. That's how she wants to have an impact on the world. So with that being one passion she has, comedy is just something that she kind of fell into, was good at, and enjoys. most of the time. But it also really frustrates her sometimes. So she kind of goes to what she like enjoys and knows. And I'm kind of making this, you'd have to talk to her about this kind of stuff, but she's like,
which we'll get to at one point.
Yeah. But she always likes to, like, she wants to do something big, but she doesn't exactly know what that is. So right now, the something big that I'm trying to do is, actively happening. And I really appreciate and probably not thankful, verbally thankful to her enough for like kind of holding down the fort while I'm doing this crazy thing. I hope to one day be able to return the favor. Like if I reach a point where I'm established enough to where like I am, working with a larger acting agency, or I'm able to tour and like pay bills doing entertainment and comedy, and she wants to go do something fucking wild, then she can go do something fucking wild. Like,
which, I mean, I don't know. I don't have any barometer of like guessing this, but I feel like you're really on your way to getting there.
I'm doing my best. Yeah.
You're really funny, and you're humble about it too, which is the most important thing. You're like, dude, I'm not a master yet. I'd like to get to arenas one day, but I don't think right now is the time that I should be in an arena. Yeah. I think the more important thing there is like, if people, especially, in the entertainment world, are like, just take a step back to be like, I'm not that big of a shit that I think I am. Mm-hmm. And like, I can be bigger if I just shut the fuck up and work a little bit harder.
I mean, I can tell you, like, to kind of give a more definitive answer to that question, like, what's the trajectory? What do you kind of see yourself as, like, your next goal? Since I'm kind of telling you that, like, my goals are very checkpoint driven.
Which seems like you've got a plan. This is why I asked. It's like, it seems like a cliche question, but it seems like you're the type of guy that kind of sits there and
I think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, you thought about it.
So this year I'd kind of like to move out of, because I host a lot. I'm pretty good at hosting. I've done that for several years. I've also done what Youngblood did. I've middled before.
Okay.
I'd like to do more of that this year than I did in the past year.
Middling?
Yeah. Okay. Because it's you're falling on the sword as the opener, and if you're a strong opener, if you're able to do it really well, then the show's off to a great start. But sometimes the opener is the weakest of the three comics, and they're the warm-up guy, right?
Is it sometime, or is it always supposed to be the weakest of the three? Like, if I'm a booker or if I'm a manager of a club, how do I want to situate this?
You generally don't want your opener burying your headliner, because if people paid money to come see Ari and I did better than Ari that night, that would suck.
Does that happen?
Yeah,
because I mean, you've been a host, so you've been in this industry a lot.
I mean, I've hosted shows where I wasn't terribly familiar with the headliner, and I mean, I don't like to brag on this kind of stuff, and I don't, but like objectively speaking, I was getting more laughs than them.
By all means, sometimes brag is a good idea.
I was doing better than them, and they were the name on the marquee type thing. Okay. And then and that's not necessarily something that it's conjecture. Like after the shows, you're doing the meet and greets and you're talking to everyone, and people were, standing by me and talking to me, and some would even go so far, sometimes even within earshot of the guy, being like, hey, you were my favorite of the three I saw tonight, or hey, you were the best, or you were better than the headliner, like doing like type things. And like as the opener, it puts me in a really awkward spot when that kind of stuff happens, because I kind of have to like sheepishly smile over at the headliner and be like, ooh, sorry I buried you type thing. Like,
right.
It's nothing that you want to have to deal with the dynamic after, but it has happened. And, it's not terribly often, but like generally when a headliner is booked, you want that person to be the strongest performer. That would be the intent that I would.
Because it kind of makes everybody look good. Yeah. Because I'll put it to you this way. It's like, okay, if you were good, Youngblood was good, and Ari sucked, which Ari, you're amazing. It was like a really funny show to be at. Yeah, it was great. It kind of puts a sour note on the entire experience, especially since like I didn't know you at that point. I didn't know Andrew. I came to see Ari because I know Ari. Yeah. Like I actually convinced an entire group of friends to go see Ari Shaffir. Yeah. I don't know if you remembered us, but we were all in the ugly Christmas sweaters. It was me and 4 of my friends and their wives. So like, but only the guys were wearing the ugly Christmas sweater.
Okay.
And so I was like, all right, maybe we'll get recognized. We did it like we did it on purpose, so to be made fun of. Yeah, we were like, it'd be funny if they made fun of us, because but it didn't
be the targets. Yeah, oh, man, you guys might have been just tucked away in our.
Because I mean, we walked into it like you going there to be the target of a joke if you're wearing ugly Christmas sweaters.
So you might have just been out of eye shot, because like there's like a perimeter of where it gets darker and darker and darker, and then pretty much from like I would say like maybe 2 or 3 tables, maybe 3 or 3 tables in, it starts to get darker to where you can see figures, but you can't see faces. And then past that, like in the back, it's abyss. It's just dark.
Yeah, because it's like I think it's like a conical shape where it's like the further out it goes, the less light that's projecting out. So you're not really seeing much of what's going on.
There's no lights behind you. There's just what the spotlight is coming down and then what is splashing off.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of exactly. So
and
like you're not going to see anything.
Like the improv is very dark and very cavey. Like it's like almost like because it stretches back on the
yeah.
So like when I can really only see like the first 2 tables and like a little bit on this side because there's lights coming from this side, but like that whole back section next to the booth is gone. The whole when they break a curtain and go past into those booths along the wall back there, fuck if I know if the curtain's even open. Like it's completely blocked out. Like, but and some comics like that. I like not being able to see everybody.
I think it makes you puts you at a little bit of ease.
It does,
and because all you're really looking for in that moment is, do I hear them laughing?
I also am looking at facial expressions in the first few rows. Yeah, I'm looking at people.
But those are usually people that sit there on purpose. Like I try to sit in the very front of a comedy show on purpose. Like especially if it's like Russell Peters or somebody like that. You're like, I really want this guy to make as much fun of me as humanly possible.
Yeah, I mean you're a very unique breed in that respect because you have you fall in a very small category because most people want to sit so far from the stage so they don't get made fun of.
I consider myself a connoisseur of comedy, so like I love what is able to be done off the cuff.
Yeah,
I think that's just crowd work is some of the most amazing thing ever. Like you have to, it's a special talent because there's comedians that never recognize the crowd at all, and they're really funny. But then there's some people that just like they'll be in the middle of doing a bit, something that they've practiced so long and then gotten really good at, and they'll notice something and just switch into like, you motherfucker, come here. Yeah. And the entire attitude changes and it becomes even funnier because all of us can relate to that moment because we see that guy right there. Yeah. It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it makes it that's kind of the magic when you can do like a really fun crowd work instance is like that's when shows get really, really fun. Like I did so on Thursday sometimes they didn't with Ari because he did all 3 nights, but
I think we did the Saturday night or the Sunday night with Ari. I don't remember which night we came to.
But Ari actually worked. Like a lot of headliners haven't done this recently, but like he did Thursday, Friday, Saturday shows, and he did 2 on the tail end and then 1 on Thursday. So he did the 1 Thursday show too. Normally, if they have like someone who's not a special event, person or not someone as big as Ari, the Thursday show could have a headliner. Or sometimes it's just a compilation of local comics in Hayenas. They call them 325. So it's like 3 feature level comics doing 25 minutes a piece and a host, opening up the show. So basically it's like a free show. There's no ticket pricing or anything like that. You just come in. It's a 2-item minimum. It's a fun date night. And those shows can get pretty full because they're free, obviously. But they're all local showcases. Now, Ari did his Thursday show, and that show was not free. Like, still, you had to pay for that one too. And sometimes there'll be headliners who come in, and that show is still free. So,
which I completely understand why Ari would charge for it because, like,
but
Jew had dropped at that point. And it was like 4 point something million views on YouTube. Like, and it's Ari fucking Shafir, dude. Yeah. Like, he's almost infamous after that Kobe shit too.
Yeah. So they're That's what they deem like a special event, and that's when they have like they're on their Thursday night shows, which would normally be free. It's a paid show. So across the board, there was sold out with him.
Okay.
And those 325s that they sometimes do with the local people, I did one recently, and like I think I abandoned my set like maybe 1 or 2 jokes in, and just started fucking with the audience like for the middle 12 minutes probably.
Cool. Okay.
And then as I was fucking around with them, we were talking about like marriage relationships and like sex tips for married couples. Like that's kind of the topic of conversation I was doing with them. And then it threaded perfectly into some of the stuff that I was talking about, like having a kid with my wife. So I brought it back home to that, and I closed on a joke. So like I had established stuff up top. To be honest with you, I was kind of petering out. Like I was a little tired. I wasn't really doing as well as I wanted to. So I broke and went into the crowd, found some fun there, played around in the mud over there, and then I went back into my material, closed up, and left. And that's
which may have invigorated you too, because it made you feel
leagues better. Once I asked one question that got a really ridiculous answer from the audience, and the entire room broke open, I was like, "All right, cool, we're back online. Here we go." It was just a brief little, staticky period there. Right. While I was a little hazy and just not feeling it, and then we hit our stride. It was great. So it was a fun show.
Which isn't it nice to have that like talent in your back pocket that you can pull out.
It's
that a lot of
skill,
comics,
for
it's
sure.
skill, exactly,
Yeah.
skill, not talent, skill.
Yeah.
But like a lot of comedians just don't want to. They're like, I'm not gonna mess with you.
Something you got to practice, and it's hard to practice it because when you open Pandora's box, you can't shut it. Like once you get the crowd involved and they start talking, sometimes they won't shut the fuck up.
I've seen some of that stuff like on YouTube,
Yeah.
reels or like highlights, and you're just
Hecklers
like, oh,
and stuff.
come on, dude, shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Like, do you understand how difficult this person's life is right now to be on stage trying to make 3,000 to 7,000 people at the same time laugh, depending on where they are?
Yeah.
And you're just screaming out some bullshit of like, oh, that wasn't funny because my cat died when I was 4. Too bad, asshole. Your cat died.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself.
The cat's still dead. Yeah.
Yeah, like, you know what? That's what happens with cats. You have them for like 13 to 15 years if you're lucky, and then they die.
Then they go away.
It's like, what did you expect to happen?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was trying to actually put it back to like you were talking about. You wanted to be more middle this year. Does that mean more road travel and things like that?
Yeah. So, linking up with a headliner that, we jive well together, and he or she wants to go out on the road and bring me on for a couple spots here and there. So I see like a lot of my friends, they'll work with someone, and then that person will kind of blow up, and they'll have a good relationship with that person. So that person will, like, anytime they're in Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, New Mexico, Arizona, they'll hit up that local person here and be like, hey, I'm doing this club. I'll tell them to fly you out, and if you can fly yourself out, then I'll put you up and you can do the show and it pays this amount or something. Like doing more traveling shows and linking up with some headliners who I'd really like to work with that I think I'm kind of like they're within range of me being able to work with. Like there's someone who I could I might be able to do a festival with them and introduce myself. We jive and all that kind of stuff. So doing a little bit more traveling. Trying to middle a little bit more, and then on the acting side, I want to film some stuff myself. Since like I do a lot of commercial stuff, and I have a decent commercial reel of like commercial spots I've done, but I don't have a whole lot of like narrative and like true acting, like character acting or just regular sketch acting or something like that. So would love to create a couple like high production value, and then kind of put a little bit into a reel plus some stuff projects I've done with other people. And then basically develop, like by middle of this year, I'd like to have a coherent like film reel. So you have like a commercial reel and a film reel, and the film reel is like you acting. So like
being dramatic,
a range of emotions, playing a character, doing someone with an accent, playing a certain type of comedy role, or playing a serious role, like giving them a range. And you only clip up the little 20, 30, 15-second parts that you're in that like really show an emotion or something. Like that's why I'm like. The thing is, like last year I did the research on like what this all looks like, and I just didn't have the opportunities, and I was kind of honestly like waiting on something to fall in my lap. This year I'm just kind of like, okay, so nothing's going to fall in my lap. I got to create something so I can create a reel for myself, so I can put that on my actor's profile through my agency, and then say, hey, agents, here's a decent reel that I got. If you could, in addition to my commercial reel and like my acting resume, shop this out too. So maybe I can start booking, a day player in a sitcom, or something that's filming in Texas, like a speaking role in a small movie or independent movie or something like that. Like that's all kind of within my range. Like I'm not asking to like appeal to, James Cameron for the next installment of Avatar.
Bill Burr, like people that don't know who he is, you're missing out on like comedy gold.
I saw him.
He's one of the funniest guys ever.
Yeah, like recently, past couple months, he came to AAC. I went by myself. I was like, I'm just getting one ticket and going.
Yeah, it's worth going to Bill Burr.
Yeah, and it was the whole nine. Phones were locked up in a bag. I had the bag, and you could only release it when you were done and all that stuff. It was great because like
that bag thing's such a smart idea.
It's a smart idea.
People get to hold on to their IP a little bit longer.
Yeah, and they can actually like lock in and pay attention to it. Because I could feel my phone vibrating, but I was like, there ain't nothing I can do about it, so I might as well continue paying attention instead of being on my phone and missing this premise or something like that. It was great. It made the show a lot more enjoyable. But also like that's when they do that, typically like they do that a lot at the store when like someone like Chappelle's going to come through, because if they're workshopping material at a small venue like that, some of their stuff can get filmed out of context and then put online, and then they get blasted for it. So they lock everybody's phones up. Now,
right.
That means, and I'm sure Burr is still workshopping that set that he was working on when he came to Dallas, but that means that the man can come to Dallas and do a workshop session at the American Airlines Arena. That's like somewhere where he goes to just a set out and to just try it out, which like obviously in the in the taping of whatever special he's preparing for,
It's gonna be flawless.
they're still gonna lock everybody's phones up. But like, it's crazy to me that like, just because a comic is coming through and just because they historically have touched on topics that are very polarizing or triggering for some people, they don't want anybody to film it, so they lock everybody's phones up until it's like at a point where they are
comfortable
with it. Because the alternative is somebody films something out of context and they get ruined before the thing even drops.
Right.
Like,
because I mean, especially like if someone like Burr is still working out material that he's not like, he hasn't tightened it to the point where he's super satisfied. Like the word economy isn't there yet, and he might have extra shit in there that's just never going to see the light of day anyways. So why ruin it?
Yeah.
Why mess it all up? Like I'm sure before Ari Shaffir's Special Jew became Ari Shaffir's Special Jew, there was a lot of shit that he didn't want on YouTube for a good while he was working that material out.
Yeah, dude.
But when he releases it, he's like, yeah, here, let the world see what I have to show you, circumcised or uncircumcised, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think Ari doesn't. He's not like a Rush special person. Like he doesn't put out specials every year to stay relevant. I think he
does 4 years ago for the one he did.
He does them when he's comfortable,
something?
and that was very much his vibe. Hanging out with him, like in the green room and like away from the club and stuff like that. He was very like, oh well, all right, well, very like passive. Like after our show that Monday, he was traveling to Guatemala to just unplug and kind of decompress because it was like the last run of shows before the holidays. Because he wasn't going to do anything else until like January.
I think he mentioned it on the stage.
He did,
or something.
yeah. He said he was going to go, and I was like, "Oh, cool! That trip's going to be fun. You going to go like record anything or do any podcasts or have any other comics come out there with you?" And he goes, "No, I'm just going by myself, and I'm not even bringing my phone." I was like, "All right, you should probably bring your telephone in case of like emergencies or if you need to like translate something." And it was just like, "No, I just really kind of want to unplug completely."
He's done this before, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, he does.
I've heard
he does this
Ari's
a lot.
infamous for this, like just leaving everything and gone for like a month, 20 days, whatever the time frame is that he finds.
Yeah,
he needs to like just turn off.
Yeah, and that's great. I
wish I had the balls to do that.
I definitely think that you could. I mean, I think it's just a matter of. I mean, with a family and stuff like that, it's
That's
harder.
the thing is like I couldn't.
But he's got a girlfriend. But
I couldn't fathom it. Like,
and his girlfriend just has to be cool with him, needing this time to decompress. Which I mean, their relationship. They've been together. I think he's told me like 4 or 5 years. So like, I'm sure there's understanding there. Like every once in a while, within the year, Ari's going to need to take a vacation away from everyone, including her, type thing. So
like God bless my wife, man. She and I, she's so nice about that too. Like I went to Costa Rica last year by myself, no one there. Just one of those spiritual journeys that I wanted to take.
Yeah. So
but
boom, right there you did it.
But I always had constant access to her.
But you have an obligation to make sure she knows you're alive,
and
right?
make sure she's okay. And
Yeah.
if I can help out with something like because plus I want to hear her voice, hear my kid's voice. Like I'm like that quintessential like the old lady. I don't do that shit. Like I love my wife and I love my kids and I love spending time with them. But I also love being in Costa Rica by myself.
Yeah.
It's just like keeping that connection. It's that one thing I can't sever is that leave the phone in LA thing.
Yeah. Is that tough? Like how is that something that you guys just kind of got an understanding together about, or like what was the conversation like when you were trying to do that?
For me to take a trip by
yeah,
myself.
where you're just like, hey, hon, I want to go away.
So she knew kind of roughly the reason as to why I want. So my wife and I are very, very different people when you think about it.
Yeah.
She is very much so a straight edge.
Sorry, I'm texting my wife.
No, by all means.
No, you're good.
She's very much so a straight edge. So like she doesn't like to do shit. And me, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. Is like I love to explore what hallucinogens and psychedelics and things like that can do for you.
Yeah.
Not a big drug person, but I do love that aspect of the drug world where it's like, how come this exists?
Yeah.
And how come it works on us? And how come a lot of people don't want us to try these things?
Yeah.
So she also understands like, okay, you're not trying to become addicted to something. Obviously 37 years old at this point. Like she knows what my vices are. So she's like, yeah, go be you.
Yeah.
Because on the flip side of that is like, she went to Spain with her mom for like 10 days. I was home alone with my kids. Loved it. One of the greatest experiences ever.
Good. Yeah.
And then prior to that, she went to, where'd she go? I think she went to Italy with my mom. And she just had a great time like that. So we do these things for each other of like, okay, I guess you don't want to go to, the jungles of Peru to check out ayahuasca, but you do want to go to Spain or Italy or whatever it is.
That's her form of doing what you're doing, spiritual journey.
Yeah, and like she and I always, that's one of the things, we love traveling together. So it's not like, oh, she'll go to Italy and we won't ever travel together. No, we will have our family trip and then a separate trip for she and I, and then if we can wing it, like an isolated trip of she'll go with her mom or my mom, or I'll go by myself.
Cool.
But that's kind of like, it's a conversation you have to have.
Yeah.
Like, hey, look, I love you more than anything in the world, and you love me more than anything in the world, but I need this for me to stay sane.
Yeah.
And I know you need that
and
to stay sane.
They want you to be sane, and they know you'll
most of the time they do. Yeah.
Yeah. When they're not driving you insane.
It depends.
Yeah.
But no, that's the thing is, like, I think you got to get to that balance, because if it's all one-sided and it's lopsided, and a lot of relationships nowadays are, where it's like the guy is just a complete piece of shit trying to appease his woman and has no identity of his own. Yeah. Or he's on the opposite end of the spectrum where he's a complete piece of shit oppressing his woman. Yeah. So she has no identity of her own. And I just sit there going like, look, I get it. Relationships aren't 50-50, but they should be pretty close to that number.
Yeah. You need to be hovering, and those numbers might need to change from time to time.
You should be 60-40 maybe, and she should have control in certain situations, and it should be 60-40 to you, whatever. The ratio doesn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's like there's just people that don't understand that and seem like to think like, oh, I need to be in control of my wife, or she needs to be in control of me.
My dad wasn't like that, so I just never understood when guys were that like possessive.
My grandpa was my role model on my mom's side, and he was never that guy. Yeah. He was always like, he loved his wife, loved his family, and she loved him and respected him, and like, you could never say anything bad about my grandfather in front of my grandma. She would probably tear you to shreds.
He would. My dad was always very like respectful. Like there was a lot of respect in my house. Like that I learned that early, and then I would see. I would go to other friends' houses, or I'd have girlfriends where I'd meet their family, and their parents would like bicker a lot, and I was like, yo, I don't think your parents respect each other. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, oh, if you don't understand what I'm saying right now, that's a giant red flag.
So like if you take, I'm sure this happens in your relationships. Like if you publicly shame your spouse,
oh God,
you're not doing it right.
Yeah,
I'll just put it. I'm not even gonna say anything bad. It's just like, but it doesn't matter if it's the guy or the girl doing it. If you're publicly shaming each other, something's amiss. Yeah, privately, that's different. Like you're not shaming each other. You're actually teaching each other. Yeah. Like, hey, babe, Albert Einstein didn't really like bagels. Einstein Bagels is just a weird name because it started on college campus, whatever the fuck it is. I don't know why that just popped into my mind.
That is something that's very real world.
But I mean, if you're with a bunch of friends and somebody makes, your spouse makes the mistake of saying something that way, and you're just like, you fucking bitch, don't you know that this comes from this?
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there going like, dude, no,
why are you talking?
You're the fucking bitch at the moment. Like, why are you? A, you're ruining the evening of everybody just hanging out, just like shooting the shit and just whatever. And B, like, do you really need to like assert your dominance everywhere?
That much?
Like how insecure are you?
Yeah, that's it.
And that's the thing is like adults who have self-actualized understand like you're the insecure one. This is why you keep trying to assert your dominance on the only person that said yes to you willingly in life. Like you're an idiot.
Yeah. And I mean it's all listening to each other and being respectful of one another, and like allowing for the flexibility of like, hey, she needs this to stay sane, I need this to stay sane. There's a little bit of give and take. Is it perfectly split? I mean, if that's another thing. If you know that it's not perfectly split down the middle, that means you're keeping tallies. And if you're keeping tallies, that means like you're counting something, and that means you're not doing something without an expectation of something else coming back to you, which I don't love that way of living. I don't think things should be transactional like that. I think you just do something because it's what you feel is morally right and good and respectful. And then hopefully that is reciprocated. And if it's not reciprocated, then you're in kind of a damaged relationship and you should maybe not be in it type thing,
Yeah. I mean, I look at it, what is it called? A metronome on a piano? Mm. I look at it like that. As long as there's rhythm, that thing should just be going back and forth. It doesn't, it shouldn't, if once it's in the middle and you've dialed in 50-50, you fucked up.
Yeah, and it's too like you're making it too transactional and business.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, like if you give me this, I'll do that. And I'm just like, who cares? Like that's with the people who my closest friends, whom I lent money to, borrowed money from. We've never kept tabs on each other. Like my childhood best friend, he lives in Michigan now. I probably paid for a good amount of stuff, like when we would go out, because his dad was kind of in and out of jobs. He didn't really have a whole mess of money all the time. He worked himself a lot, and he would pay for what he could on his own. But like, and then as he grew up, he like got better and better jobs, and now he has money, so he's like very giving with it, and like he's appreciative of that kind of stuff. And I'm not trying to imply that like I paid for everything for him, but like,
I know
when
exactly what you're
we
saying.
would go Hey Mr. People for beer in high school, like it was usually me paying, because I also worked a lot of the same jobs as him, plus like I could borrow money from my dad every once in a while if I needed to, because I was like just a little shithead kid, and I'd just be like, hey dad, I need pizza money, and we'd go buy beer with it, of course.
All of us did that. It was fun. You got some pizza too, probably.
Yeah. We would make his dad buy pizza.
There you go.
But like that, I've never thought back on how much money my buddy Drew owes me, or how much money I owe him, or what if I owe him a ride, did this. Like, who cares? Like,
you're the horrible person if you keep those tabs.
Yeah, dude.
I'm sorry, but you're like, because I had that when I was growing up, single mom. You don't have a lot of money in the house, so like you have good friends that have both parents, and they take care of you. They're like, hey, okay, Tom can't afford this shit, but no. All of us will chip in, $4 each or $2 each, so he's part of the group. And then as you grow up, you either kind of grow out of that I don't have money mentality, or you actually get out of that and you're like, oh, I do have money now.
Yeah.
And you either try to do something in return to the world, like just for your friends, or, donating or whatever it is, to kind of like, you're not trying to appease anything. It's just like you understand how people can be in a shitty situation that is not in their control whatsoever.
Yeah.
So you kind of like just throw it back.
Yeah.
And you never, ever look at it like, oh, I've let my friends borrow money. I have a ton of friends that I've probably borrowed money from and have borrowed money from me.
Yeah.
And the fact that none of us can sit there with a straight face and say how much it was and when it was is because none of us cared.
We never know. Yeah.
We never cared.
That's
like
good.
Nobody keeps tabs on that shit, dude.
No, dude.
Those are real friends, though. Those are the people that like you want to have as your buddies.
Yeah.
In thick and thin, because when you were thick, they were thin. You helped each other, and now vice versa.
Yeah, those are your ride or dies, man. Those are the people that you work with.
And that's never a big list. If you've got a big ass list of ride or dies, you're doing something wrong, dude.
No,
you're miscategorizing your friends.
Yeah, or you maybe have some in there that aren't necessarily ride or dies, but there might be like real close friends, or like people you work with well, or something like that.
But like when the shit hits the fan, you know exactly, like if it's 2:00 in the morning and you make a phone call, who is going to pick up and who just isn't going to pick up and call you back the next day.
Yeah, and I've always lived he lived in Austin for a long time, my childhood friend. So we graduated high school, he went to K-State for a year, and then he transferred down to UT. So he's either been an 11-hour or a 3-hour drive away from me, but we grew up together in Plano. And this is the furthest he's ever lived away. So he moved to Michigan. I was not real. I was bummed that he wasn't going to be 3 hours away, but I was also kind of like, okay, you're 3 hours away in a different format. Now I just got to fly to you. Yeah. But that being said, if something were to go sideways when he lived in Austin, it doesn't matter the time of day or where I was or what I had to do that night. If something was going on with him, I would drive down to Austin in a heartbeat. Fortunately, nothing like that ever happened. But if something were to go down in Michigan, I would be at DF. I would find wherever I could find a flight to Grand Rapids, and I wouldn't care the cost of the flight last minute. I would just buy it without thinking, and I would go, because like that's what you do. Like it doesn't. I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna go help my friend. I'm not gonna not go help my friend out because the one-way ticket to Grand Rapids was first class only, and it was $850. No, that sounds like I'm paying $850 to go make sure my friend's okay.
Yeah. And it's those small things that honestly probably get appreciated way more than anything else. That you could throw money at a situation, but if you throw yourself at the situation, it gets appreciated way more.
Yeah. And sometimes you got to throw a little bit of money to get yourself there.
Right. Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I think.
Yeah, it's like we win a minute.
So again, episode 1, but tell people how they can find you.
Also, it's Shahyan J on all socials except Twitter, because I'm permanently banned for making fun of Abbott.
Wait, what?
I'm permanently banned.
How do we not talk about this?
I don't know, but we can do that's a
okay. I'm saving this for another conversation.